Thank you for tuning in to the live show. Welcome back. It is currently 12:58 a.m. And of course, today's date is the 5th of June 2025. The year is flying. Welcome back to the live show. All right. Today, we're going to check out so many situations going on in the United States. But most importantly, I want to say before we start, this is a free speech platform. Whether you're liberal or conservative, it doesn't matter. Come out here, free yourself, and say what you want to say, but be respectful. Okay, be respectful. Because of YouTube algorithm or whatever. And with that being said, Elon Musk is now opposing the big, beautiful bill. He once said that he doesn't know if a bill can be big and beautiful at the same time. But now he's saying, matter of fact, he's tweeting so many times per day to get, I guess, Trump's attention when it comes to um, getting a reply from Trump concerning the big, beautiful bill. I don't know if it's just trolling at this point, but for some reason, Trump hasn't replied or said anything bad about Elon Musk. He hasn't said anything bad, which I'm surprised. But let's see how this week plays off into the next week. If Trump, or pardon me, if Elon keeps going at this rate and calling out the big beautiful bill, saying it's gonna increase the debt ceiling, and it's he called it something. He said this is a disaster, and this is going to lead Americans into wild, crazy, sort of like deep down into debt or more debt, sort of like that. That's what he said. But Elon Musk has done great job with Doge, but now he doesn't work with the Trump administration currently. But the Department of Government Efficiency is still around. And then, yeah, let's see how this goes down. But hopefully the bill passes because some people are, matter of fact, a lot of Republicans are coming against the bill because they're saying it's going to increase the debt ceiling and also is going to increase the deficit. But most people don't know that there is something called the tax EV relief. It's like if you want to buy an electrical vehicle, you could potentially get $7,500 tax relief for your EV. Most people don't know that, but it is actually a thing. So this bill is going to potentially take out the 7,500 EV tax credit, not relief tax credit. And most people are saying that is this why Elon is getting angry at the big beautiful bill? Because the tax credit, 7,500 EV tax credit, would have been expiring in 2032 or something like that. But now, with this big beautiful bill, the 7,500 EV tax credit could be eliminated from vehicle placed in service after December 31st, 2025. And that is going to impact EV lovers who wants to buy electric vehicle because of course everybody likes the 7,500 tax credit. Who wouldn't? But yeah, maybe that's why Elon isn't happy. But of course, if your car is made in the United States, you're gonna get no taxes on interest. Okay, you would not be paying taxes on interest. According to Donald Trump, that's what he said. Any product made in the United States, especially automobile, you would not be paying taxes on interest because most people get loans for buying cars. So if your car is made in the United States, for example, like Ford, if you buy a Ford truck like F-150, everybody loves F-150, right? I love F-150 trucks. So say you get an F-150 Ford truck and you get a loan to buy that truck, you would not be paying taxes on the interest. Does that make any sense? But the 7,500 tax credit on EVs is most likely going to be eliminated by December 31st, 2025. And that may be a reason why Elon is opposing the bill. My opinion. Here we go. China makes AI generated videos to criticize Trump.
New tariffs on steel and aluminium imports to the US kicked in a few hours ago, now doubling to 50%. The struggling US steel industry is applauding this latest broadside from the Trump administration. But other sectors that rely on the metals are warning of price hikes everywhere, from car lots to grocery store shelves, although it's not entirely clear how or when the cost will be passed on to consumers. Meanwhile, the Trump team has asked all countries that trade with the US to submit trade proposals by the end of today. The White House called the letter that went out a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. Meanwhile, trade tensions between the US and China are still flaring as Chinese state media is taking some new swipes at President Trump with the help of AI. CNN's Will Ripley explains.
This AI-generated anime is going viral in China, portraying U.S. President Donald Trump as a tariff-wielding superhero. It's one of several recent videos mocking Trump's trade war policies, many of them created with AI.
Your taxi truck, your taxi chair, red was burning, your dumpster fire.
China's English-language economic and trade order. Hard at work in factories have been flooding China's tightly controlled social media platforms for months, all untouched by Beijing's army of online censors. Designed to push China's narrative, the U.S. is making a fool of itself, and more importantly, losing ground to China in the global trade war President Trump started. China's foreign trade has been able to withstand the difficulties, he says, maintaining steady growth and showing strong resilience to maintain competitiveness on the international front. China's Bureau of Statistics put out numbers claiming exports are actually rising despite the trade war, partially due to a surge in orders before the tariffs kicked in. Outside observers often question the accuracy of China's numbers, which are impossible to independently verify. At this Chinese textile plant, the director says the U.S. no longer dominates their strategy. The trade war made me realize the U.S. is just a small part of the global market, he says. We'd rather bring Chinese products to the rest of the world, reasonably priced, high quality, and let more people benefit. China's top diplomat is also firing back, Wang Yi reportedly telling new U.S. Ambassador David Perdue the U.S.-China relationship's at a critical juncture. The Chinese readout of the meeting also says David Perdue stated that President Trump greatly respects President Xi Jinping. Far from tough talk, China claims, ahead of that likely crucial call between Trump and Xi. They sure do have a lot to talk about. The 90-day trade truce they brokered in Geneva is unraveling right now. At stake, rare earth minerals, vital for U.S. tech and defense, which China is still restricting. Washington's latest retaliatory moves include tech sanctions and student visa bans. Both sides are now accusing the other of undermining the agreement, which is putting global markets and supply chains on edge. Will Ripley, CNN, Taipei.
New U.S. tariffs on steel and aluminum imports are now in effect. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Tuesday, doubling the tariffs from 25% to 50%. Critics warn this could lead to higher prices on everything from cars and appliances to electrical equipment and even groceries. But the U.S. president insists the action will boost manufacturing jobs. Meanwhile, the U.S. trade representative has told all countries that trade with the United States to submit their best trade proposals by Wednesday.
USTR sent this letter to all of our trading partners just to give them a friendly reminder that the deadline is coming up. And they are in talks. Ambassador Greer, Secretary Bessent, Secretary Lutnick are in talks with many of our key trading partners around the globe. As you know, Brian, I know the Wall Street Journal has covered this quite heavily. And they continue to be engaged in those discussions. And this letter was simply to remind these countries that the deadline is approaching and the president expects good deals. And we are on track for that, I will emphasize.
To New York now, and Rana Faruha, CNN global economic analyst. She's also a global business columnist and associate editor with the Financial Times. Good to have you with us.
Great to be here.
So ahead of a much anticipated phone call between President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping,
The moment President Xi and President Trump actually get on a call together or maybe meet physically, all of this is over. The moment they physically meet or talk face to face or on the phone or whatever, but they have to talk to each other. I don't know who wants to do it first. I guess the OG, the 45th, and now the 47th president of the United States is now willing to do the call, being the first person to call. And President Xi, of course, he doesn't want to be the first person to call as well. So they're sending delegates to do the conversation, which is just going to prolong this issue. But with that being said, let's move on. Pete Hegseth.
Worth noting that on the list of names that they are reportedly considering, this is according to the CBS and the New York Times, CNN hasn't independently confirmed it, it's Thurgood Marshall, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Harriet Tubman, Dolores Huerta, Lucy Stone, Cesar Chavez, Medgar Evers, civil rights leaders, all of them, women and people of color.
No, I think it's always very important to look at this through moral and spiritual lens. See, brother, I had met Brother Harvey, and he supported Goldwater in '64. He's a Jewish brother from Bayshore. He underwent a change and transformation. He was murdered, organized hatred against precious gay brothers and lesbian sisters, and trans, and black folk, and brown folk, and Jews, and Arabs, and Muslims, and white folk. All human beings can be hated. And we've got to put a stop to the cycle of any form of hatred. And Moscone was also assassinated. The mayor was assassinated the same day, right? And it was a supervisor who had voted against him who killed him, and then he committed suicide after he left jail. That's a level of spiritual decay back then that we still have to come to terms with today. So when I look at those, when I see Harriet Tubman, I say, oh my God, Harriet Tubman's too good to be on any U.S. ship anyway, tell you the truth. But I mean, we won't get into that right now.
That's a different conversation.
Yeah, exactly.
But, I mean, Harriet Tubman. Talk about warrior ethos.
Absolutely.
Gun toting here. I'm a big gun person.
I mean,
I love my guns.
But come on. I mean, what are we doing here? Is the idea just that if you are a woman, if you are a person of color in American history, you don't get remembered or recorded on a ship, but if you are a Confederate traitor to this country, you do. I mean, Donald Trump, back in 2017, said it was sad to see the history and culture of our great country being ripped apart with the removal of our beautiful statues and monuments. You can't change history, but you can learn from it. Robert E. Lee, Stonewall Jackson. I mean, that's worth defending, but not Harriet Tubman, Thurgood Marshall, Medgar Evers.
Medgar Evers, Harriet Tubman, I think their names should stay on the ships. I mean, these were incredible Americans who withstood insurmountable odds. I mean, certainly things that I certainly couldn't imagine today, Abby, in the modern sense. And I would argue, thinking about the warrior ethos, particularly Harriet Tubman, I mean, this is someone who I think really embodies what you would want in a warrior, someone with a level of courage and magnanimity. You talked about this once before, Doc, a couple of years ago. And so I would certainly think she would be someone who would instill the sense of pride and fearlessness you would want in your warriors. I'm not exactly sure why the secretary is making this decision. I know he says he wants to move in a different direction, but those three individuals in particular, I think we should leave their names on the ships.
But is this really what we want our Secretary of Defense to be focused on right now? Don't we want him to be focused on the strength of our military, keeping people safe, not someone's sexual orientation? I mean, this is the job of the Secretary of Defense, is to make sure that we have a strong military, not spend his time trying to figure out what is going to appease the far right or Donald Trump. And this is the problem with Hegseth. And I think that from the beginning, he has shown that he is not qualified for this job. He does not know how to do his job. And time after time after time, again, we continue to see that he has no idea what this job is about, and he cannot lead the Department of Defense. And so I think it's a real question about why is he spending his time doing this?
It's 3 days into Pride Month, and clearly a signal is being sent to the LGBTQ community, but particularly on this issue of gay rights, which we had a conversation on the show about this yesterday, about the erosion of support for gay rights among conservatives. This seems to be a very clear signal that they want to double down on that. And I think the question, to Xochitl's point, is why? Why is this a priority for the defense secretary?
Well, I mean, let's not forget the Republicans had the first transgender speaker at a national conference in 2016.
Would they do that today?
President Trump, I think she'd probably be invited to the White House.
You think so?
President Trump made Secretary Bessent the Secretary of Treasury, the highest ranking, to my recollection, the highest ranking openly gay American to ever hold that office. He's had Rick Grinnell in his first administration. He was the first president to actually run openly in support of gay marriage. So I don't think his LGBT record is really in question. But
exactly,
this isn't the hill I would die on. Just let me start with that caveat. But let me try to explain. There is still controversy about the LGBT movement, right? We have this debate at this panel. We talk about women, men in sports and things like that. And we used to name Navy oilers after rivers. I looked that up before I came here, right? And at some point, the previous administration and others decided we're going to make political statements. And most of the people that they named ships after have no real political controversial views. And I think we are still having a debate over part of the LGBT issue in terms of how broad of a scope the movement can go without pushback. We're seeing, again, this issue with women and men competing in the same sports is an 80-20 issue where people are not with the LGBT community, right?
Yeah, but
and I'm only saying that because we used to name ships after things that were not at all politically.
We name ships after people all the time, as we've established. We name military bases after people all the time. Some of those people tried to overthrow this very government. And so all of a sudden, when the people are black, brown, or women, it's a problem, but it's not a problem. When it was, Andrew Jackson or whatever it is,
I think you should be taken off too.
I guess this, you were talking about Trump's credentials on LGBTQ issues. I think you're right about all the things that you noted. But I do ask, the question I have to ask is, what signal are they sending by making this move now and doing it with this particular ship that's named after someone who was killed just because he was gay?
Because I think his name was included to insert an idea into the public sphere about a political issue that we're having. I think that's part of somewhat of the DEI movement, the thing that Pete Hegseth has been talking about. So I think, at the very least, whether you agree with me or not, we're going to see more of this type of stuff happening, I think, as the military recalibrates.
I just want you to finish the thought, because is the statement that he is making that people like Harvey Milk should not be honored in this country? Is that the statement? What is the statement?
I mean, Harriet Tubman is honored in so many ways, I can't count it. And I'm not saying she doesn't deserve a ship.
What is the statement?
My point is, if there is still, if there's a remnant of DEI included in certain things, including the names
DEI?
of ships, because I think it's a person whose contribution to society is celebrating the diversity of LGBT people.
Well,
in my opinion,
I mean, it could be that he was served honorably in the Navy. It could be that he was an elected official.
We have no other municipal elected officials with ships named after him.
Okay.
Not one.
Yeah, but he was...
It's because he was a gay rights advocate. That's fine.
Pete Hegseth, in an attempt to rename formerly named Confederate military bases back to their Confederate names, picked out of a list of veterans just random people who served, which is fine. Harvey Milk is a person who served.
These ain't the issues I die on, by the way.
I think part of what's at stake here is, how do you separate the raw vilification and hatred of vulnerable people, no matter who they are? And I've mentioned the whole list before, right? And it's a human thing, but we got to keep track of it. And then how do you have a respectful political conversation about wrestling with various issues and policies? The sad thing is that they blew her. And so that's why so many of us say, no, we will defend our precious trans and gays and lesbians, even if we disagree with certain policies that's coming out of that community. I'm going to defend black folk, even when I have deep disagreements with black people, because I want their humanity affirmed. And that means what? Giving them the right to be wrong and the right to be right.
Okay.
This is deeper than the politics. He uses the language of abomination. Now, see, that's biblical. Hebrew scripture, that means what? What God loathes and...
Exactly. So someone in the comment section is saying that Elon doesn't oppose Trump, because the title of this live stream is Elon opposes Trump, which 1000% I believe at this point, because Elon Musk calls Trump's bill, which he already said a bill cannot be, he doesn't know if a bill can be big and beautiful at the same time. But it's not just that. He's calling the bill a disgusting abomination. Yet Trump is saying that this is a big, beautiful bill. And somebody else says it's a disgusting abomination. How doesn't that mean that you're opposing Trump? He's opposing Trump. And in my opinion, he's sort of way over his head on this one. In my opinion, okay. I don't know if this is because of the $7,500 tax credit on EVs, which will be going away because of this bill by December 31st, 2025, or it's because Democrats are saying they want to investigate him for substance abuse. I don't know which one it is. I don't know if it's double playing both parties. I don't know. Or he's trying to sell his product, or he's lost some credibility when it comes to his businesses like Tesla, SpaceX, or whatever. Who knows? Whatever is happening behind the scene. We don't truly know what's happening behind the scene, but he's opposing Trump at this point.
Hates. And you'll turn to the New Testament. Jesus, Luke 16:15 says, it's an abomination to God to love money more than God. And loving God, we got the brother from Marist University here, our dear Catholic brother. We know loving God means loving neighbor and giving a priority to the least of these, the poor and working people. So then the question becomes, is the budget itself immoral and unjust when it comes to taking from the poor and giving to the rich, redistributing the wealth available to the poor, because the poor are getting cut in Medicaid and others, and the rich are benefiting. It may not be a vicious, callous thing, but these are the effects and consequences. So it's interesting that the richest man in the world, using biblical language, which Jesus is talking about love of money, is the very thing that gets in the way of loving God.
I'm not sure that Elon is concerned about the cuts.
I know Elon didn't say that.
No, he didn't say what I said, because I'm talking about priorities.
He wants more. If it were up to him, he would cut a lot more.
Absolutely, that's true.
Elon Musk came in, served a function for Doge, and they had some success, some controversy, some failure. That's been documented at this table for the last 3 months. The thing that Elon Musk doesn't understand is how to make the sausage. And if this feels like a rerun, it's because we were exactly in this position 3 or 4 weeks ago when the House was struggling to come up with the votes to pass the big, beautiful bill, right? At the end of the day, you're going to see some of these senators come home, right? They are not going to be responsible in their home states for the biggest tax increase on the middle class, right? They are not going to be the ones who eliminate taxes on tips, taxes on overtimes. They're not going to do it. So even though there's a lot of talk now about the need to cut more spending, I believe there will be more spending cut. But at the end of the day, there's going to be some compromise.
They have to cut, though, Joe. I just don't know how it's possible to balance this thing, looking at projections over the next several decades, to not have some pretty extreme cuts. There's going to be a lot of pissed off people, Abby, if I'm being honest, but it's the only way to balance the budget.
Michael, nothing has eliminated the deficit and its effect on sort of the economy more than economic growth over the last decades. The total spend on the Vietnam War was $168 billion. That's half of what HUD spends today, right? So just general economic growth down the road. This bill does that. It provides $11,000 in spending for each in take-home pay for each American. It provides tax credits, $2,500 for every family.
I mean, there's some good things in the bill. I don't disagree with you on that, Joe.
This is a stimulus.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree in protecting and codifying tax cuts. I think that's a good point as well. But again, we're conservatives. We've always been about austerity. We've always been about passing on an economic condition that is stronger for generations to come. I think we can go a whole lot further. I think Musk is right. There needs to be more cuts.
You know what?
I want more cuts, but the sausage takes a lot of squeezing to make.
Conservative of the old sort. Trump had nothing to do with the conservatism you all talking about.
The irony is that there are all these members, Republicans, in the House who are now all of a sudden, now that Elon is speaking up, they're like, Scott Perry says, Elon is right to call out House leadership. I wish I had a nickel for every time the Freedom Caucus sounded the alarm and nobody listened, only to find out the hard way that we were right all along. We expect massive improvements from the Senate before it gets back to the House. Anyone want to guess how Scott Perry voted on this bill? Yes, no?
Well, tell us.
He voted yes.
Yes.
Okay. He supported the bill.
I
mean, I guess he thinks it's the Senate's job to produce a good bill. Marjorie Taylor Greene says she didn't even know about a part of the bill. She says on AI that violates states' rights. Eric Swalwell, a Democrat, responds, "You have one job, to read the effing bill." Whatever happened? Whatever happened to that? I mean, literally, they used to shut down the House over this issue.
Is not that much. A 1,000-page bill is
not
not
1,100
a lot.
pages. 1,100 pages.
Rather, when you have staff that do nothing but analyze these documents, that shouldn't be too much to have a good understanding. But are you going to remember every single component of the bill? Of course you're not.
Why would Scott Perry
Joe, how many
vote
of
for
them
the
read the
bill?
bills?
Why
I was
would
in
the
state legislature
entire
for a decade,
Freedom
never read a
Caucus
single one.
vote for the bill and then come back after the fact and say, oh, this is a terrible bill now that Elon has said that?
Well, go ahead.
Because I think Elon Musk opened the door for now Republicans for it to be okay to criticize the bill. He's now going out there and saying, this is one of Trump's biggest allies. I don't know if you saw Speaker Johnson, but he started off his statement, well, I disagree with my friend, Elon Musk. Everybody's worried about Elon Musk. He is the most powerful, wealthiest person in the world. And so I think that when it comes, he allows the Republican Party to now go out there and criticize it. And I think this is just the beginning.
I mean, Musk has given permission, but the Freedom Caucus from day one, they have been very clear where they stand as it pertains to this bill and many bills from the past. That said, Mike Johnson is the Speaker of the House. The expectation is for the Speaker to bring his caucus together to pass this piece of legislation.
Hey, he
did
that.
He did his job. That doesn't mean everybody
agreed with it. Didn't do their job.
So we know Johnson and Trump have been lying and saying it would not contribute to the deficit. That's not true. That's just false. That's a lie. And therefore, we have to acknowledge. Now, what's interesting is you didn't see Elon say, Trump, you lying, but by implication, he is, because Trump said X and he said not X.
Well, Doc,
but I can tell
Trump
you this,
did
though, what
say-
they won't deal with is the military expansion. What is an abomination right now is what's happening in Gaza, and we are supporting, sponsoring, facilitating with money and equipment. That level of unbelievable misery, that level of unbelievable atrocity.
Well, they can give back the hostages, and we can sign a peace deal and go forward. That would be a great way
I
to
would
end
love to
the
get the hostages, but when you got 20,000 babies, my brother.
On the broader point of
Palestinian
spending,
babies got the same value as Israeli babies. That's an abomination, just spiritual and ethical.
On the broader point of the spending, which is part of what he's raising here, Republicans are now in power. They are not willing to even consider cutting the parts of the government that they could
like the military?
tap into.
Well, we can't.
Yeah.
I mean, look at China's expansion and their prioritizing
I get that,
military
but
growth.
There's no conversation about, even Elon was saying a few months ago, waste, fraud, and abuse in the Pentagon. There's a whole report that has been written about where it is. Why not actually go after those things? There's not even a conversation about it.
Well, we're talking about waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, and everyone's having a conniption.
Well, that's because
that's because God forbid we want work requirements for people on Medicaid. God forbid we want
honest interpretation of what is in this bill is not just waste, fraud, and abuse. In fact, arguably, it is not at all waste, fraud, and abuse, because when you change the requirements for eligibility, that's not waste, fraud, and abuse. That's just changing the requirements for eligibility.
Sure, but
those
one
are
of the
not
things
the
is
same thing.
requiring work, and I think that's a great thing.
Sure,
one of the
that's
things
not,
is
but that's
requiring
not what you said.
I think that's a fantastic
But that's not
thing.
what you said, Joe. Is it, are you changing the requirements, or are you going after waste, fraud, and abuse?
Well, I guess I'm doing both.
Because it sounds like you're changing the requirements, and just say that. If that's what you're going to do, I think that's part of what's happening
I wouldn't be
here.
opposed to us looking back to the early middle 90s and looking at what Clinton and Newt Gingrich did in terms of eliminating, 340 plus thousand federal jobs. That yielded an ultimate surplus to the economy writ large. It had significant cuts across the board. I would actually encourage Republicans to do something like that. That's beneficial to the American taxpayer.
Oh my goodness.
We have been standing by all morning long watching
Republicans are going to blow this for Trump because almost 80 million people voted for this man. And they support everything that he's doing right now. Everything he's doing right now, he said it before he became the president of the United States. Deportation, he said it. Tariffs, he said it. Tax cuts, he said it. Child credit, he said it. I don't know what the Republicans are doing. They're going to mess this up and lose the midterms 2026. I'm telling y'all, they're going to blow this. If they don't pass this bill, they're going to blow this. They will blow this.
Been standing by all morning long watching Truth Social to see if President Trump would respond to the comments from Elon Musk about the president's tax and spending bill. Elon Musk calls it a disgusting abomination. But as of now, President Trump has yet to respond at all. Calls himself a counterpuncher, but remarkably quiet on this. So what's going on here? With us now, CNN Chief Data Analyst Harry Enton. So Elon Musk, in calling this a disgusting abomination, says it will explode the national debt, says it runs counter to all the work he did trying to cut government spending. What's the reality?
Please just never call me a disgusting abomination, John, please.
Never to your face.
Thank you. Behind me is perfectly fine. I mean, look, you know, President Trump wants to send these DOGE cuts to Congress through the rescission process, and that, get this, would only bring down the national debt by about $9 billion. The big, beautiful bill over 10 years, get this, through the roof in terms of the federal deficits and the debt, up $2 trillion. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know that $9 trillion doesn't come anywhere close to $9 billion comes anywhere close to $2 trillion. So all of DOGE's work that they would send, at least a part of it, to Congress gets completely wiped out, wiped off the map by the big, beautiful bill. No wonder Elon Musk is so upset.
So, as I said, he's taking on this bill. He's mostly critical of Congress here. In a battle between Elon Musk and Congress, who wins?
Yeah, who wins between Elon Musk and Congress? Well, look, Elon Musk is a very popular guy amongst Republicans, a plus 63 net favorability rating. Beats Mike Johnson at plus 46, who, of course, is the Speaker. How about John Thune, the Republican leader in the Senate? Only a plus 30. So if Musk is taking on these two gentlemen, it's not a fair fight. Elon Musk is a very popular dude. But he is nowhere close to where Donald Trump is within the Republican ranks. Look at that, a plus 79 net favorability rating. So if Donald Trump decides to turn his fire on Elon Musk, that is a fight that Elon Musk, simply put, cannot win. If Donald Trump stays out of it, he stands a pretty good chance, Elon Musk does, against Johnson and Thune.
It's interesting because, again, I've said Trump has been quiet
Yes.
so far this morning. I wonder if he'll look at this segment, he's a big Harry Enton fan, and say, you know what?
Many are.
My popularity is a lot greater than Elon Musk right now. Maybe I should weigh in. I'll be interested to see if he stays quiet on Truth Social all day. On the issue itself, Harry, when Elon Musk is criticizing the debt and deficits here, how much do voters really care?
Republican voters. They don't care. They don't care. I mean, look, cut taxes even if the deficit increases. You know, you go back 33 years ago, it was just 22% who said cut taxes even if the deficit increases. But the party of fiscal responsibility is no more. Now 74% of Republicans say cut taxes even if deficit increases. So if Donald Trump, more popular than Elon Musk, sticks his neck out, the Republican voters will absolutely be with him because they believe cut taxes even if deficit increases, quite different than the way they were in the early 1990s.
You were no disgusting abomination. You were a glorious miracle.
You too, my friend.
Thank you, Harry Enton. Appreciate it.
In just a few hours, President Trump is going to host key Senate Republicans from a crucial committee at the White House as he pushes forward on his so-called big, beautiful bill, or disgusting abomination, which is how Elon Musk described it. So according to the president's biggest financial backer, that bill is precisely that. The world's richest man hopped on X Tuesday to call it massive, outrageous, and pork-filled, and says it will add to America's deficit. The social
social media assault on the bill from one of the president's biggest supporters caught House Speaker Mike Johnson off guard.
In my opinion, Elon is just trying to trend. He's trying to be the talk of the town because he knows Trump sucks up a lot of space. He doesn't do it intentionally. He's just like that. It's been like that for many decades. Trump sucks up the energy, the space, everything in the room. As long as he's in the room, there's nobody that could feel the space he can feel. You get what I mean? But Elon is trying to be that person. Of course, Elon has a lot of influence, no doubt, but he's testing the grounds at this point. Why would you use all of this crazy words to just say, I don't think the bill is right. Let's check it out and try to reduce our spending. But he's using Kill Bill poster. He's saying disgusting abomination. He's trying to suck up the energy and gain space. He's way over his head, ladies and gentlemen. When it comes to this bill, I'm telling y'all, just like I said, maybe this doesn't concern politics, but I said this before Kendrick Lamar and Drake started fighting. I said Drake is way over his head. You shouldn't be going head to head with a boy that was born in Compton, California. You were born in Canada to a rich family. This boy was born in Compton. So Elon Musk doesn't have the balls that Trump has. I'm sorry to say, Elon isn't built like that. He may sound like he's built like that because he's wealthy, but it's not.
My friend Elon is terribly wrong about the one big beautiful bill. Elon is missing it, okay? And it's not personal. I know that the EV mandate, very important to him, that is going away because the government should not be subsidizing these things. But for him to come out and pan the whole bill is to me just very disappointing, very surprising in light of the conversation I had with him yesterday.
While the House Speaker may disagree, several Republican senators who have already voiced concerns over the bill agree with Musk.
New spending of this bill actually exceeds all the work he did to try to find savings, so I can understand his disappointment that the new spending actually would exceed all the work they did to find cuts, and I'd be disappointed too.
Joining me now in the group chat, Evan McMurray Santoro, reporter at Notice, Charlie Dent, former Republican congressman from Pennsylvania, and Kristen Soltis Anderson, CNN political commentator and Republican strategist. I feel like I need to start with a little translation from the House Speaker there, because as soon as you hear "my friend," that's kind of the bless your heart of like capital speech. And then the other thing I heard was him mentioning EV credits and sort of seeding the idea that Musk has a vested has kind of a vested interest in getting this bill a certain way. I don't know who wants to jump in. There's a lot of angles here.
Well, the angle is, it's funny that Elon Musk said the bill is filled with pork, but he seems to be most upset about the removal of the green energy tax credits, which many could call pork. And so that obviously would benefit him and his company. So I think that's where a lot of the anger is. It's over those green energy provisions.
Yeah.
Although it's likely that the Senate may restore many of those provisions. So maybe Elon Musk will say something nice if they restore them.
And of course, this is happening just after his exit from the White House. And so there's so much speculation about their relationship. But how do you think this actually, how does this affect this congressional legislation?
Well, I think what you said about Mike Johnson is totally right. That was that classic, my friend Elon. He's just a little mixed up.
Yeah.
Very much a different tone when it comes to Musk. I mean, it wasn't long ago, December of last year, right? Musk came out, said a bill that Mike Johnson liked was a bad idea, that spending bill, and it got squashed immediately. Every Republican jumped on this right away. It does not feel like that is where things are going right now. I can say that I have not talked to anyone, my colleagues at Notice, not talked to anybody who thinks that Elon's going to kill this bill with this tweet.
It makes sense given his public polling. Like, he is a very unpopular figure now, but it hadn't been the case with Republicans. Now I'm in your territory polling. Okay, Kristen, don't sit there with your hands crossed letting me ramble.
So Donald Trump is more influential and powerful with Republican politicians than Elon Musk is. And if
will
back
ever
in December there were questions about who really he is the voice of influence and power. I think that's all been very clarified by the last couple of months. Donald Trump is the one with the influence and power over House Republicans and Senate Republicans. And that is why I agree. I think it's highly likely this bill gets across the finish line. Tweeting is easy, governing is hard.
Okay.
The other thing is that what Musk is pressing for here is for the bill to cut more in spending. And to the extent that there are clashes going on, not all of them are about increasing cuts. You have some folks like Senator Josh Hawley, who's expressed some concern about cuts to Medicaid, saying we've maybe cut too much. So I think ultimately, for those who are saying, ha ha ha, look, I'm
But does it put wind in the sails for the people who are reluctant?
Well,
So,
I mean,
no, hold on one second,
sure,
because I
of course.
think we do have a
Sure,
soundbite here. You remember where some senators are voicing concerns. People, of course, are watching. Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins here. Here's what they've been saying.
What we've been hearing mostly from Alaskans is on the Medicaid side, concerns that there may be significant cuts to Medicaid that would further deny access to health care.
But it looks like PEPFAR has been cut, and I consider that to be possibly the most successful public health program that has ever been used in Africa and other parts of the world. So I do not support the reduction of PEPFAR.
So, to your point, it's not people who want to spend less. It's people who are like, we need to spend specifically on these things I care about.
Well, I think if the bill comes down to Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins, it will look very different than it looks now. That's true. That's not the pathway for this bill that Republicans are sort of going through here. You know, we have not seen that push in that direction that much. I think that what we're dealing with here is this conversation of how to get these fiscal hawks, right? That's what the conversation was in the House too. So even though the conversation, the pushback from the White House is, oh, Elon only cares about the subsidies, right, and the EV credits, for example. No one said that before when Elon was talking about doing all the things he was doing in the government with his own conflict of interest with his own companies back then, right? They're saying it now because he's saying stuff that they don't like. But this push towards fiscal responsibility, towards a fiscal responsibility, as those people would say it, that pushing against the deficit, that's a very powerful movement. You know, one of the things about this Elon conversation, we have a powerful lobbyist in the Notice newsletter this morning who is saying that, look, Elon and the talk about the deficit, it will not kill this bill, but I won't say that on the record because I don't want to get on the wrong side of these deficit people, right?
Yeah,
it's still a very, very powerful thing. I don't think it's going to come down to PEPFAR like Susan Collins wants. I think it's going to come down to how much are they going to cut these programs and what is the political risk that they run and how can they balance that?
Well, look, I think the Senate at the end of the day is going to do less on cuts, less Medicaid cuts, less cuts to SNAP, less cuts to student loans and other programs and green energy credits, which should please Elon. And they're going to do less on the SALT deduction. They're not going to do a $40,000 deduction.
Yeah, this is a cap for state and local taxes.
Local tax deductions. So just expect that. So the fiscal hawks are probably going to be very disappointed with what the Senate advances. And by the way, it's really rich, though, that Elon is complaining about the pork when, what he's complaining about are things that would actually add costs to the bill by restoring the green energy tax credits, which the Senate will likely do. But that seemed to be his primary complaint.
Yeah, and to be clear, in this process, it goes back to the House because this is a reconciliation bill. So this
telling y'all, man, Elon is way over his head on this one. Of course, nobody wants to keep increasing the debt or the deficit, but he's way over his head on this one. 80 million people voted for Trump.
Iranian leaders say that their country will not yield to the Trump administration's demands that it dismantle its nuclear.
Think about it. When people in-house is opposing the commander-in-chief, now people outside, of course, they'll have the guts to oppose the commander-in-chief. For example, Iran is saying they're not going to bow down to U.S. pressure. Iran. This is just annoying.
Your program. In a speech hours ago, the country's supreme leader said that the U.S. proposal undermines Iran's sovereignty. And the Iranian president says that he will, quote, not compromise on our scientific, expert, and nuclear rights in any way. The U.S. is pushing for a new nuclear deal with Iran, a deal which Tehran is now calling incoherent and disjointed. Still, a U.S. State Department spokesperson says that the White House is not backing down on its demands.
The fact is, President Trump tweeted that there is going to be no uranium enrichment. The maximum pressure campaign on Iran remains in full force.
Okay, let's get to CNN's Fred Pleitgen, who joins us live this morning from Berlin. Fred, great to see you. After weeks of nuclear talks between the U.S. and Iran, there is still no definitive agreement. What seems to be the missing ingredient here to seal any sort of deal?
Uranium seems to be the missing ingredient, and what exactly to do with it. One of the things that we heard today, and it was really interesting to hear that speech from Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who's of course the supreme leader of Iran and the final authority on anything that happens in Iran, including whether or not there's going to be some sort of nuclear agreement with the United States, where he called the leadership of the United States both rude and arrogant. And I think one of the things that we sort of focused on that speech is that he said that enrichment of uranium, enrichment done by Iran, that is key to Iran's nuclear program, that it's something that Iran has sacrificed a lot for, and certainly something that the Iranians are not going to back down from. He said that he believes that is the reason why, as he put it, the enemies of Iran, of course meaning the United States, were trying to get Iran to stop that enrichment. But he also said that the U.S. can't do anything about it, meaning enrichment, that the Iranians were going to continue enrichment. That, of course, on the face of it, seems to be pretty clear words towards the Trump administration, towards the United States, that the Iranians are not going to go for any agreement that would not allow Iran to have its own domestically produced centrifuges and also the enrichment that is done with those. That's, of course, a technology that the Iranians have been developing for a very long period of time, and also one that the United States fears could give Iran a path to a nuclear weapon, even though the Iranians have consistently said that they are not seeking a nuclear weapon. And so we had President Trump a couple of days ago tweeting that under any sort of agreement there would not be any enrichment done by the Iranians. What we've learned is that in that proposal that was put forward by the Trump administration, that they seem to be seeking some sort of consortium where the U.S. might actually invest in Iran's civilian nuclear sector, and other countries would be involved as well, Middle Eastern countries and also the International Atomic Energy Agency. But what we've been hearing consistently from the Iranians is that they say that enrichment needs to stay in Iran, it needs to be in Iran, and it needs to be Iranian, and it's not something that they are going to be willing to back down from. That certainly seems to be maybe not the missing ingredient, but definitely the ingredient that the two sides seem to have a lot of trouble coming to terms with.
Yeah, and clearly it's a very important issue for both sides, so it's hard to sort of see where things go from here to that point. Fred, last week Trump said that they were close to a solution. Our reporting suggests that, according to sources familiar with the talks, that momentum appears to be fading. So are the next round of talks set? I mean, what happens now?
Yeah, I don't think that the next round of talks are set. I think that both sides believe that the talks will continue in some way, shape, or form, even though it's not clear when those talks are going to happen and how those talks are going to happen. First of all, you're absolutely right that issue of uranium enrichment is definitely the key one and the most difficult one. And we have heard from some folks in Iran, Iranian officials, who have said that they're highly disappointed in the proposal that was put forward by the United States, and specifically when it pertains to enrichment. And of course, the U.S. has said that for their part, or at least the Trump administration has said that they believe that there should be no enrichment. However, what we've heard from Iran's foreign minister, who's been on a trip in the Middle East, is that the Iranians are going to respond to the U.S. proposal within the next couple of days, and that then they were going to see how things move forward from there. So certainly it does not appear as though the nuclear talks that are going on, the negotiations process, is anywhere near dead, or that the two sides are going to say that they're going to discontinue that process. It just seems as though that issue of uranium enrichment, Iranian uranium enrichment, is definitely one where the two sides are having a lot of problems finding to one another, and finding especially wording where both sides can say, look, we got what we wanted out of this, and we can move forward towards a deal, Rahel.
Okay, a lot to watch here. Fred Pleitgen, live for us here in Berlin. Fred, thank you.
All right, Canada.
Happening now, a major escalation in President Trump's trade war with Mexico and Canada. A new order from the White House effectively doubling tariffs on steel and aluminum imports to a whopping 50%. I want to discuss this and more with the Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. Premier, thank you so much for joining us. President Trump, as you know, says these new tariffs were necessary to protect U.S. industries and U.S. national security. What's your response?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. It's doing the total opposite.
It's a $4 billion tax on American products that have steel in them. We know that the cost of any product with steel in them in the U.S. has gone up 16%. We ship in approximately $30 billion of steel from the U.S. We're going to onshore as much as we can. We have great steel manufacturers in Ontario and across the country, like steel beams that build buildings, rebar, all those items. We're going to onshore it and start producing it ourselves. So that's going to cost not only the $4 billion, it's going to cost $30 billion of business, which is equal to tens of thousands of steel workers' jobs. And what I recommend, why don't we have a goal together and say we're going to produce more steel with America and Canada, and we're going to create 250,000 new steel jobs. That's what we need to do rather than penalize Canada. And then look at China. They're shipping in cheap steel, slapping made in Mexico stickers on, or other countries, and shipping it into the US and Canada and costing American and Canadian jobs.
So you're putting forward a serious proposal, but how do you think the Canadian government should respond?
Well, I've highly recommended to the Prime Minister directly that we slap another 25% on top of our tariffs to equal President Trump's tariffs on our steel. You know, he has to start looking around the world at China and other locations that are taking Chinese steel and really stop the flow of steel. That's the problem. Canada is not the problem. Again, we purchased 30 billion with a B of steel off the U.S. and that's going to come to an end real quick.
I know you said yesterday, Premier, that a trade deal between the U.S. and Canada is, quote, in your words, very close. How much do you see these new tariffs complicating these ongoing negotiations?
Well, it just seems with President Trump, it's 5 steps forward and 10 steps backwards, and that doesn't help. It doesn't help the situation. Again, it's going to add $4 billion tax, I call it, on the backs of Americans. They're going to pay a lot more for any products with steel in them, and that's unacceptable. It's working against his philosophy, and it's unfortunate that he's taking this route against Canada.
There's a new acronym, you may have heard it, that's being used by some investors and Democrats here in the U.S. to describe the president's on-again, off-again tariff policies. That word TACO, T-A-C-O, which stands for Trump always chickens out. Do you think it's likely that President Trump will back down once again once we start to see the impact of these tariffs on the markets and on the cost of products?
I'm just hoping, for the sake of the American people, that I wouldn't say chickens out. I would just say let's come to our senses and start working together. We're so much stronger together. I propose the AMCAN Fortress, American Canadian Fortress, put a ring around it, and would all be more prosperous and safer and wealthier. That's what we need to do. We need to focus on that, opposed to constantly attacking. And we're the strongest ally, number one customer, as the U.S. is our number one customer. And I'm just dumbfounded the approach he's taking. He's lumping us in with every other country in the world, and that's unfortunate that he's taking that avenue.
It's hard to believe the U.S.-Canadian relationship has deteriorated as it has. Before I let you go, Premier, a quick question. I want to ask you about the rise in anti-Semitic incidents we're certainly seeing here in the United States and indeed around the world. I know Ontario, especially Toronto, has a large Jewish community. How are you dealing with this rise in anti-Jewish hate?
Well, I have zero tolerance for any hate, any discrimination of any kind. I stand with Israel. I stand with the Jewish community. Everyone should be living peacefully, and I'm just tired of all these protests that are happening. I always say the anti-Semitic, slurs and attacks is unacceptable. If you want to attack anyone within the community, go back and start attacking within your own country. Don't bring your problems over to Canada. I'm sick and tired of it. We have 110 nationalities. Everyone needs to get along, And I say that for, by the way, for any religion. Let's live peacefully together, and I think we'll all have a great life. But when it comes to racism, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anything, I don't stand for it.
Yeah, good point.
I agree with that. I don't stand for all of that stuff. All right.
Worried about the
Elon
impacts on their states.
Musk. Here we go.
Elon Musk might have said he was leaving Washington behind, but it is now clear that he is so unhappy with Republicans' mega bill to advance the president's agenda. He is so unhappy that he wants to start over. Musk wrote this on his platform, formerly known as Twitter, this afternoon. Quote, "A new spending bill should be drafted that doesn't massively grow the deficit and increase the debt ceiling by $5 trillion. End quote. He followed that up with a much more straightforward message. Quote, "Kill the bill." This morning, the Nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office announced that the House bill would add $2.4 trillion to the debt over the next 10 years, the deficit, and that seems to be the source of Musk's frustration. In just the last day, Musk has called the Trump agenda bill massive, outrageous, pork-filled, disgusting, and an abomination. And all of these tweets clearly blindsided the Republicans who just spent months working on a bill that barely passed the House.
Elon and I had a great conversation, about a half-hour-long talk on Monday this week. We had it was a very friendly, very fruitful conversation together. And he and I talked about the midterm elections. And he said, well, I'm going to help. And then yesterday, 24 hours later, he does a 180 and he comes out and opposes the bill. And it surprised me, frankly. And I don't take it personal. We don't take it personal. Policy differences are not personal. I think he's flat wrong.
Slightly flustered Speaker of the House right there. So Republicans are surprised, you could see it really on his face, to hear that Musk is not on board with this big, beautiful bill. They're probably not happy with his vow to fire anyone who votes for it in the next election. He does have an awful lot of money to put behind that particular threat. But here's a big question. Do the Senate Republicans, who are now the ones that are going to have to move this bill forward, do they actually care what Elon Musk thinks?
Entitled to his opinion. He's frustrated. I think he believes, in my judgment correctly, that we're quickly becoming debt slaves.
He certainly has the right and ability to say what he will about it.
I think people listen to what he has to say, as they should. He's a really smart guy.
I don't think it changed any views in the Republican Party in the Senate.
He looks at it a different way than we have to look at it, because, again, we're the ones that have to vote for it.
Like I said, I can't respond to platitudes. That's all I saw in a tweet that I had summarized to me.
Okay, so Speaker Johnson weighed in, Senate Republicans giving their thoughts. So we were all eager to see, right, weren't you, how Donald Trump might respond to Musk's tweets. So for most of today,
he doesn't have
the response from the president looked like this. Let's put it up. Here it is. So until this afternoon, the president hadn't said or posted anything about the man who called his big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination. We'll show you in a second how that is usually not how he operates. But as we were getting ready for this show, President Trump did put something up. He posted a screen grab, so he didn't say anything himself, just posted the screen grab of the tweet that Musk sent last week when he left Doge. And of course, in that tweet, Elon Musk says he's leaving, and he thanks President Trump. I think this might be the definition of a subtweet, but I also might be too old to be using that phrase correctly. So we're going to check in with the panel on that in just a second. But let's start with CNN's Manu Raju, who is live for us on Capitol Hill. Manu, my big question here, do lawmakers care about what Elon Musk has to say here? Because obviously there was a period where they did. I mean, this isn't the first time Musk it wouldn't be the first time, I should say, that Musk has scrambled what was going on legislatively. There was a period some months ago where Mike Johnson was taking all sorts of incoming and they were going back and forth on text. But obviously Musk has been kind of shown the door, albeit graciously, but still shown the door by President Trump.
Yeah, look, there's a lot of frustration among Republicans, particularly ones who supported this in the House. Remember, at the time, Elon Musk was not raising those concerns about the deficit. That didn't really come out until yesterday, the comment from Elon Musk. So very much surprising, blindsiding Republican members who told me that they are frustrated with Elon Musk's handling of this and really putting them in a difficult spot. Now, the other question is, will it actually impact the vote counting in the Senate? And there's really not a clear indication that it really will. There had already been concerns that members had raised about a whole wide variety of issues. On one side, how deep of cuts to seek on Medicaid in particular. That's something that some folks on the right flank of the Senate GOP wanted deeper cuts because they are aligned themselves with Musk's concerns about the impact on the federal deficit. To the Congressional Budget Office today estimating roughly $2.4 trillion impact on deficits over the next decade. And then there are folks on the more moderate side of the Senate GOP and House GOP who are really worried about the cuts going too deep and want to pare back the phase out of some of these green energy tax credits that are being called for in this bill. So those concerns still remain regardless of what Elon Musk is saying here. And the vote counting is still the same too. John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, can only afford to lose 3 Republican votes on a bill that's expected to go along party lines. And they are moving furiously behind the scenes to try to lock down support, try to weigh members' concerns from everyone from the people like Ron Johnson and Rand Paul, the right flank of the conference, who say that they will oppose this bill, to more moderate members like Senator Lisa Murkowski, who are worried about the impacts on their states because of those budget cuts. And just moments ago, members from the Senate Finance Committee, Republican members, just left from the Capitol to the White House to meet with Donald Trump to try to cobble together and see if they can come to any sort of consensus with the president, because they want this passed out of the Senate by the end of this month on the president's desk by July 4th. And to do that, major differences need to be resolved.
Yeah, they sure do. Manu, as we discussed yesterday, busy summer ahead for you. Thank you very much for that reporting. And our panel joins us now. CNN contributor, New York Times journalist, podcast host Lulu Garcia-Navarro, staff writer for The Atlantic, David Frum, CNN political commentator, Sochi Hinojosa, and CNN senior political commentator, Scott Jennings. Welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. Scott, you're back for another day of this. One of the reasons why it's been, you have an interesting perspective on this is because you did recently talk to Elon Musk one-on-one. And you came on yesterday and said that you weren't surprised that Elon Musk was upset about this. But the question is, what does the White House think about this? Because, again, so let's put up how long it usually takes President Trump to criticize someone who criticizes him. Let's go to June 3rd, where Rand Paul appears on CNBC at 9:18 a.m. to criticize the bill. And Trump on Truth Social at 9:18 a.m. trashes Rand Paul over it. Go back to May 4th, 9:20 p.m. Karl Rove appears on Fox News with Trey Gowdy. 10:31 p.m. Donald Trump has tweeted criticizing Karl Rove for criticizing him. So, Scott, I mean, this is a muted response from Donald Trump, but this is a big, threat to his agenda.
Well, first of all, they're friends. They get along. Elon Musk had a lot to do with President Trump winning last year and has been a big part of the administration. I don't think there's any reason to go out and trash an ally like Elon Musk.
Well, he's not acting like an ally at the moment.
Well, he has a difference of opinion about this one issue, and that's okay.
In fairness, these people did too. I mean, Rand Paul has the same difference of opinion, actually, on the deficit.
But what the White House and the congressional leadership believe is that this opinion that Elon has formed and some others is based on faulty scoring from the CBO. They just have a different point of view about this. And at the end of the day, this is the president's agenda. He ran on making the tax cuts permanent, welfare reform, and border security. That is the core of this bill. And I think all Republicans want to cut spending. All Republicans want to get the debt and deficit under control. But this is how the president won the election. The national popular vote, the electoral college, tax cuts, welfare reform, border security. This is the vehicle for that, and I don't think failure is an option.
That's a good spin, but this is a problem, and the reason it's a problem is because Elon Musk, what was so beneficial to Trump and what has been so beneficial to the GOP is that Elon Musk has this huge bullhorn, right? It's not only that he's the richest man in the world and gives a lot of money, but he has this megaphone, and people like him. The people
Well,
that
they
follow
used to
Trump,
anyway.
wait, no, but the people that
She's right,
follow
they do.
Trump,
I mean,
no,
it's
the
true.
people that follow Trump like him. I'm not saying
Like
writ large.
Elon Musk.
I'm saying that there are Elon Musk stands, and so if he's coming out against this, that causes a problem with the constituencies in Congress. These are their voters who might take a second look at this and not like it, and that's where the problem lies.
Well, and also, I mean, it's the other problem with this is that the midterm elections are coming up, and we have seen that Republicans are not favored to win when they control everything to win the midterm elections. And Elon Musk is someone who can open his checkbook and write to these candidates. But instead, his message right now has been, well, anyone who voted for this bill, you know, they should be held accountable. Does that mean that these members of Congress, is he saying that they should face primaries? So it sounds to me like the Republican Party is facing somewhat of a crisis very early on in an administration, going into a midterm elections where their largest political donor is now saying that the people who walked the plank for Trump maybe shouldn't get the support from the.
I'm telling y'all, man, Elon is way over his head on this one, knowing fully well that the midterm is coming. This could jeopardize the entire Republican Party for the midterm. And Trump hasn't said anything, which I support. He shouldn't say anything now. I would say let it play out. But if the bill doesn't pass by July 4th, like it's supposed to, I don't know what Elon is going to face from Trump. All right. Russia, United States, Ukraine.
Trump, quote, giving a green light to Putin to attack them. A senior Ukrainian official tells our Jim Sciutto that just moments ago. After Trump announced to the world that Russia is about to retaliate against Ukraine, the president of the United States revealing details of his long 75-minute phone call with Vladimir Putin in a post that Trump actually deleted, but then he reposted it an hour later. More unclear what the issue was or what he thought the issue was. But he says that the Russian leader told him after Ukraine's devastating strike on the Russian Air Force that there is no chance of a ceasefire. Now, today's call marks Putin's first direct response to the attack, although I suppose we should call it indirect because Trump is the one messengering it. Trump called it a, quote, good conversation, saying that Putin's message couldn't have been clearer. Trump tells us about the conversation, saying, quote, President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. Now, the president of the United States, let's be clear, not only announcing Putin's plans for retaliation and not condemning them at all, calling them an attack. This new video is into out front of key moments from the actual strike on those airfields. Ukraine's drones delivering that stunning blow to Russia. They obliterated, we're told, 41 of Putin's planes on the ground there. Let's just be clear. These are military targets. It's unmistakable that they are that these are the planes that Putin uses to drop bombs on civilians in Ukraine. Yet today, Trump calls Ukraine's act an attack and is just acting like it's completely normal and right for Putin to respond. No attempts by Trump's own account of the call. This is his account of the call to de-escalate it. Out front now, Kremlin target Andrei Soldatov. He's a Russian investigative journalist right now living in exile. He was declared a foreign agent in 2023. His website does remain blocked in Russia tonight. And Andrei, you are the author of the new book, Our Dear Friends in Moscow, The Inside Story of a Broken Generation. So, Andrei, Putin tells President Trump, this is Trump's description of it, very strongly, that he will respond to Ukraine taking out the bombers that he uses daily to bomb Ukraine. Putin then later, to his cabinet, calls Zelensky a terrorist. So what do you hear there in terms of what retaliation the world should prepare for?
Well, of course, this Ukrainian attacks was a big game changer, if not on the battlefield, but for the way Putin sees Russian national security. And well, he believes that he needs to respond, otherwise he would look really weak. And he wants to look really tough. The problem is that he doesn't want to provoke Trump. So what he wants to do is to get Trump on his side and to help him see the situation his way. And apparently it works.
Well, certainly the way Trump relayed the conversation, Trump did not express that he had said anything would be wrong with Putin doing that. That is certainly the case. And just to point out, Trump posted it, he pulled his post back, and then he posted it again. So, Andrei, there's talk tonight also of a Kremlin-led witch hunt, basically Putin looking for who may have, possibly helped Ukraine's attack. Do you have any idea right now from your reporting who the Kremlin is targeting?
Well, right now the idea is to accuse the Ukrainians of being terrorists, and that was the message of Putin at the meeting with the ministers. The problem was that the attacks on our forces coincided with the attacks on trains. So Putin wanted today to talk only about trains. He never mentioned Ukrainians' attacks on airfields, but nevertheless he made his point that all Ukrainians who attacked Russia were terrorists, and that is of course a very strong signal.
So Andrei, your new book, I've got it here, Our Dear Friends in Moscow, The Inside Story of a Broken Generation. And in it, you've got this empty wine bottle here on the front. I mean, you talk about a breakdown in Russia. You write candidly about Putin's grip on the country. And you write about a moment that actually happened on Larry King. So this may surprise a lot of people. Vladimir Putin actually went on Larry King. And Larry King asked Putin about the Kursk submarine disaster, right? That was that horrific disaster and tragedy in which 118 Russian soldiers on board were killed, and that they had, desperately were tapping on the edge trying to be saved, and they died. It was a horrible thing. Here's the exchange between Larry King and Vladimir Putin.
What happened? You tell me. What happened with the submarine?
Она утонула. It sunk.
And then there's this pause, and then that smile, Andrei. You were watching that interview. You were in Russia with friends, and you write about the reaction in the room in your book. And you write this. You write, Putin's answer shocked us. Combined with his grin, it felt like the most cynical response that a president, a head of state, could possibly have to that state's failure to save its sailors. We could hardly believe what we'd heard him say. And then you continue to talk about someone in the room. You write, then Marina exploded. How dare this American ask Putin about Kursk in such a disrespectful way? Well done for Putin for cutting him off. That's our St. Petersburg way. Tell him to go F himself. And you say that night was probably the very first time it dawned on us that we didn't completely understand our friends. And now here we are, Andrei. What is Putin's true standing right now in Russia as you see it?
Well, unfortunately, it's pretty strong, and it's built on the feeling which was shared by many Russians back in the late 1990s and the beginning of the 2000s, that the country was humiliated by the West, that the country needed a strong man to fix it, and the way to fix it is to stand well and to fight the Americans. So we've been always having this hate and love relationship between Russia and the United States, because Russia wanted to have this status of superpower, and Russia could get this status only from the United States. Lots of people understood that and still understand that, and it is in a way a basis of a huge support Putin still enjoys in the country.
Congressman, really appreciate your time. I want to start with the president's phone call with President Putin today. In his Truth Social post laying out kind of the top lines from that call, included that Putin, quote, very strongly will have to respond to Ukraine. I think what was striking about it was not that there's going to be a response. I think there's been an expectation of that. But that there was what wasn't in there was a condemnation of any potential action or an effort to try and get him to stop. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think throughout the president's term, he's been trying to get this conflict to end and to get Vladimir Putin to stop. Let's be very clear. Vladimir Putin is a vile dictator and thug. He is solely responsible for this conflict and what has happened over the last 3+ years and the death and destruction that has been wrought. And frankly, I thought it was extremely impressive what Ukraine was able to pull off the other day, and obviously the impact that it had on Russia's military equipment. So there is, obviously a real need for this conflict to come to an end. Obviously, the president has been trying over the last few months to get a negotiation between Russia and Ukraine to bring this to an end, because the reality is that we're basically at a stalemate here. And the longer that this war persists, the more likely it is that Ukraine would ultimately collapse. And that would be catastrophic for Europe, for Eastern Europe, and the United States and our allies. So getting this conflict to an end is critical. I think, obviously, we need to do everything we can to deter Putin from taking any further action. However,
including congressional sanctions? Do you want more?
Look, I support enhanced sanctions. I'm a co-sponsor of the legislation to do that. Frankly, that is something the Biden administration should have done right out of the gate. There should have been secondary sanctions. The Europeans should have ceased purchasing Russian gas. There's a lot that should have been done in the 3 years leading up to this administration taking over. But I certainly believe fundamentally that both this administration and Congress need to act. Vladimir Putin needs to be stopped dead in his tracks. And what he has done throughout the course of this 3-year war is nothing short of genocide.
Wild.
Breaking news, President Trump just wrapped up a call with Russian President Vladimir Putin. The U.S. president says they spoke on the phone for approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. I want to bring back CNN's Kristen Holmes live from the White House. So, Kristen, what did Trump say about this call?
Yeah, Manu, he really dives into two separate things. One, what's going on with Russia and Ukraine, and two, the deal with Iran. So let's start with reading this post, because this is really the White House's version of a readout of the call. He says he just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place on both sides. It was a good conversation, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and on this, I believe that we were in agreement. President Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran and that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. It is my opinion that Iran has been slow walking their decision on this very important matter, and we will need a definitive answer in a very short period of time. So let's break these into two separate camps, because that's what they are. They're two separate deals that are going on here. One, this gives us absolutely no insight into what's happening between these conversations with Ukraine and Russia. In fact, it does seem from this that there is no end in sight. Vladimir Putin telling Donald Trump that he's going to retaliate for those attacks in Ukraine. One of the things that I've been talking to White House officials about was the fact that they were looking at the idea that Russia and Ukraine had come to the table and had these direct talks as a positive, but understood that there was no peace. Clearly here, Putin is saying, I'm going to continue to fight this war. One thing that I think is very interesting here, you have to keep in mind, the White House has said over and over again that Ukraine did not give the White House a heads up about their attacks on Russia and on their airfields, those drone attacks. Obviously here, Putin learning from that lesson and telling Donald Trump in advance what he was planning to do, or at least giving him an overview. Now, the other part of this, of course, is the Iran deal. We know that the White House, the special envoy Steve Witkoff, presented a new deal to Iran over the weekend. Donald Trump has said over and over again that they cannot have any uranium, they cannot enrich any uranium at all. He is now seemingly enlisting Vladimir Putin in helping with the discussions with Iran, saying that he agrees with him. And one important thing to note here is that we've really seen over the past year or so, since the Russia-Ukraine war, a form of a partnership between Russia and Iran, their partnership growing stronger. So now it seems as though Donald Trump is kind of enlisting Vladimir Putin to help with those discussions. How this is going to play out, it's a very interesting twist here on how these deals are both separately now kind of coming together. And Donald Trump seems to be relying on Putin more in Iran, but not really facing anything that's going on with Ukraine.
All right, Kristen Holmes with the breaking news from the White House. Thank you so much. And back here in the room. Just to break down this post, I mean, no immediate peace. That seems pretty significant. It means this war is going to go on, despite these talks that have been trying to materialize over the last several weeks. And then saying that President Putin did say, and very strongly, that's Trump's words, that Putin will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields.
I found the tone of this as it relates to the Russian leader really interesting, because it was about a week and a half ago where Trump posted on Truth Social that Vladimir Putin has gone, quote, absolutely crazy. We also remember the other social media post where he said, Vladimir, stop, basically, with all the violence. And especially as Putin has shown no signs that he's going to relieve or let up on this aggression towards Ukraine, you're really seeing a growing impatience from Capitol Hill. You have this sanctions package that's supposed to be the toughest set of sanctions against Russia. It has 81 co-sponsors in the Senate. And obviously, the continued aggression from Putin is going to add momentum to that. But what I find really interesting is President Trump does not seem to be on board quite yet with that package. There was a quote from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt with our friends at Semaphore. She said the decision to impose sanctions will come from the commander-in-chief, i.e. not Congress.
Yeah, and he didn't say here. He didn't say, sanctions may be coming, Vladimir, or nothing like that.
There was an omission of threats. There's also an omission of him saying when he was told by Putin that Putin was going to respond, quote, very strongly, I urged him not to. I condemned the idea of it. I said that would be destructive to the efforts to fight. There's none of that. And obviously we don't know what exactly said. I think it is a very Trumpian play, although it has also been something utilized by other U.S. leaders of both parties. All right, how do you leverage Russia in other foreign issues that you're dealing with, particularly if it's a proliferation-related issue? It's not exclusive to Trump, but his decision here, or very clear effort to try and thread a couple of things together to try and reach an outcome, it's something that apparently might lead to an imminent strike, as he seems to be implying there.
Those two things I think are very connected. The reason he is just a reporter on what Putin was saying about Ukraine and no value judgment and not wanting to be active engaged, he wants to wash his hands of it, that is directly tied to, look what I'm doing here. I'm not weighing in on that, Vladimir. I need your help here. But it's also interesting. He says things like, perhaps he could be helpful. I think we're in agreement that they shouldn't have nuclear. It doesn't seem like he has Putin's total buy-in to what he wants him to do on Iran either.
He said Putin responded, he said it very strongly that he'll have to respond to the recent attacks.
I'm going to go to Nick Robertson, who is following this breaking news story. And Nick, I'm seeing that Yuri Ushakov, who's the Russian presidential aide, also commenting on this call, saying Vladimir Putin spoke in detail about the results of the second round of direct Russian-Ukraine negotiations in Istanbul. As was emphasized, he says, Ukraine tried to disrupt these negotiations by carrying out, under direct orders of the Kyiv regime, targeted attacks on purely civilian targets, on the peaceful population. This is clearly classified as terrorism by international law. And in our opinion, the Kyiv regime has essentially turned into a terrorist organization. He did go on a bit, but this was the stand-up quote for me. This does not look to me, Nick, and you and I were talking about this, that we are any close at all to any sort of ceasefire negotiation.
This is just tiring. All right, China.
We're learning more details about the Chinese nationals accused of smuggling a bio-pathogen into the U.S. The Department of Justice is accusing the couple of bringing over a toxic fungus, which the FBI calls a potential agro-terrorism weapon. The pathogen is known to cause billions of dollars in damage to crops. And if it is ingested, it can lead to liver damage and even birth defects in both livestock and people. CNN security correspondent Josh Campbell joining me now. So what more do we know, Josh, about this pathogen and the circumstances surrounding how it got here?
Yeah, Erica, when we talk about agro-terrorism, what that refers to is someone who is intentionally putting some type of pathogen or biological agent into crops, into the U.S. food supply. It's important to note that is not what the Justice Department is charging here. They don't say that this couple was intending to use this material for some type of nefarious purpose, but they're taking it very seriously. And what we know about this pathogen, it's called Fusarium graminearum. We know from the Justice Department that has resulted in billions of dollars in economic losses to crops. It can cause serious illness, vomiting, liver damage, reproductive defects in livestock, as well as in human beings. And what the Justice Department alleges is that this couple smuggled some of that material in. It was about a year ago that the boyfriend here was stopped at an airport in Michigan. His items were searched by customs officials who found inside of a crumpled up tissue some of this material. He was asked about it. He said, I don't don't know how it got there. Maybe someone else put it there. Fast forward now a year later, both of them have been criminally charged with smuggling, as well as with visa violations, as well as lying to federal investigators. Now, Attorney General Pam Bondi came out with a statement. I'll read you part of that. She said that the Department of Justice has no higher mission than keeping the American people safe and protecting our nation from hostile foreign actors. This defendant, who clandestinely attempted to bring a destructive substance into the United States, will face years behind bars. Of course, it's too soon to see whether this is going to go to trial, whether they would be convicted, whether there's some type of plea. But again, something that the officials are taking very seriously. It's also worth pointing out, just from an intelligence and law enforcement standpoint, this doesn't really fit the mold of what we've seen in the past with the Chinese. The FBI has accused the Chinese government of trying to exfiltrate certain material from U.S. research labs and the like, essentially steal it for their own purposes. We don't really see the case of them bringing it into the U.S. And again, as I mentioned at the top, no indication right now from DOJ that this was terrorism. Nevertheless, we see these federal charges.
Yeah, wow, it is really something. Josh, appreciate it. Thank you. Boris?
With us now to discuss is former D.C. Chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence, Donnell.
God save us. God save us, because this right here is wild. They were arrested they were suspected and saw this whole situation in their box, last year, and now they're being convicted. Hopefully, there isn't more. All right. Enough of CNN. Here we go.
We're also following this. Ukraine's surprise drone strikes on air bases deep inside Russia over the weekend raised the specter of whether a similar kind of attack could happen here in the United States. The White House just responded to those concerns.
The president has a full understanding, I can tell you, because I've spoken to him about it, about the future of warfare and how drones are a big part of that. And I will not get ahead of our policy team, but I think you can expect to see some executive action on that front in the very near future.
Meantime, Fox News Digital reports Ukraine's surprise attack shows it may take a major drone strike to change U.S. defense policy, according to experts. So let's bring in a drone expert. Brett Velikovich, national security analyst and Fox News contributor. Brett, I want to take you to this quote from Axios' reporting today. Ukraine's ability to project its military power across Russia with coordinated detonations thousands of miles apart revealed how easily the illusion of domestic security can be shattered. The bottom line, the Ukrainians are executing in real time what Pentagon war planners have only modeled on paper. I mean, it sounds pretty terrifying. What are the odds you think something like that could happen right here?
Well, they're exactly right. And the use of low-cost, lethal drone technology, Jillian, has very strong implications for the future of all warfare. Ukraine is really this blueprint of how we're going to fight future wars and how to defend ourselves. And this operation they conducted is a testament to that. We need to really start reflecting on the realities of modern warfare. And we need to understand that we're not ready. Some people still want to try and deny that these very small, handheld, first-person view drones that cost only a few $100s to build are not the future of warfare. But those people need to wake up. That's the wrong mentality, and it keeps us less prepared. In this case, they had, a few good sources, some cheap trucks, low-cost drones with munitions that destroyed over 40 strategic bombers worth billions, not millions, billions. And we spend, $10 billion on an aircraft carrier that takes a decade to build that now could be destroyed by a swarm of unmanned attack boats. And the Russians and the Ukrainians and now even the Chinese, they start to treat drones not like we treat them as just surveillance assets. They treat them like they're artillery rounds. This is ammunition, and ammunition needs to be produced in massive quantities. They collectively have their manufacturers producing millions of drones per year. And our government gets excited when a U.S. manufacturer can produce 100 drones per month. And so that's just got to change.
So if you were talking to President Trump and the defense secretary, what would you tell them to do? What steps can they take now?
Well, I think pay attention to how this operation just highlights how vulnerable we are. I talk a lot about this on the channel, and it's starting to get more concerning for me based on what I'm experiencing and seeing around the world firsthand. And it's sad because the U.S. government will likely only change its archaic laws here, which currently don't allow for the widespread use of counter-drone technology, electronic warfare systems in the U.S. until after we have a catastrophic attack on U.S. soil. And I'm asking our leaders, why do we have to wait for fellow Americans to get hurt before we do something, because we're not prepared defensively for what the state of drone technology currently is globally. People have access to this lethal capability at low cost that were before only allotted to first world countries with massive budgets. And that's just not the case anymore. We don't really have a technology problem. We've got really smart engineers in America. What we have is a contracting problem. We have a federal government and Defense Department procurement problem. Our defense industrial base, it's broken. You've got these big prime contractors that don't get it. And right now, they're just not incentivized to adapt to this modern way of warfare because the money keeps rolling out to the same large defense contractors from the government. It's like the easy button for these contracting offices.
Here's a question. In this particular instance, right, it was Ukraine's military launching these drones. They were cheap. The technology wasn't particularly amazing. Could non-state actors launch something remotely, even like this?
Absolutely. And look, the Ukraine operation was brilliant. It should be studied. But in reality, it wasn't a technological marvel. The difficulty was really in the logistics of it all, the spies who carried out the attack and not getting caught, but not so much from the technology itself. Being able to control a drone from thousands of kilometers away while sitting in the comfort of an office or your home. There's the ability to do that right now, especially with the invention of Starlink. It's not relatively difficult with somebody who knows what they're doing. And this is a case where they use even the Russians' own cellular networks to control these drones. And so we've got to pay attention to that and just how lethal this is, and realize that we're never going to fight another war without drone technology, without artificial intelligence playing some sort of critical role. And we just have outdated platforms and outdated systems here in place in America. If anything, the New Jersey drone sightings that we still have zero information on prove that. Prior administrations weren't paying enough attention to what was actually taking place around the world. And there are major innovations in lethal drone technology, and we are light years behind other countries right now.
All right. Well, Caroline Levitt says the president is keyed in.
Okay, so we are light years behind other countries. Great. Tell the world that we are light years behind them. Come on TV, national television, and tell the world. Great job. Absolute great job, ladies and gentlemen.
Meanwhile, President Trump's big, beautiful bill already facing hurdles in the Senate, now facing some heat from Elon Musk.
Peter Ducey is live at the White House with the details. Good morning, Peter.
Good morning. And President Trump thinks this is simple. He now says about the big, beautiful bill, so many false statements are being made about the one big, beautiful bill. But what nobody understands is that it's the single biggest spending cut in history by far. There will be no cuts to Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. The president's problem, though, right now is that he's losing some Republicans he needs in the Senate, like Rand Paul. When Elon Musk posts that Congress is making America bankrupt, Rand Paul writes, "Some of us are trying to stop that." And the president responded to Paul. He said, Rand Paul has very little understanding of the BBB, especially of the tremendous growth that is coming. He loves voting no on everything. He thinks it's good politics, but it's not. The BBB is a big winner. But the one thing that got everybody's attention yesterday here at the White House was this post from Elon Musk. "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination."
How mad do you think President Trump is going to be when he finds out that Elon Musk said, "I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it."
Look, the president already knows where Elon Musk stood on this bill. It doesn't change the president's opinion. This is one big, beautiful bill, and he's sticking to it.
And last night I was sent by some sources familiar with the drama behind the scenes an article that appeared in Axios that says Musk was upset that the Big Beautiful Bill cuts an electric vehicle tax credit that he thinks hurts Tesla. Also that one of his friends didn't get picked to NASA, that the FAA didn't use Starlink for air traffic control, and that he was not allowed to get an extension on his status as a special government employee.
I don't think the FAA should use Starlink. Matter of fact, I don't think that's proper. That's giving Elon Musk way too much power. I mean, what in the world? Starlink for FAA? So every plane in the sky would use Starlink? I don't think that's right. That's the whole of the United States. Hell nah.
Back to you.
All right, Peter, very interesting where we go now, because thank you very much.
Thanks,
I mean, because it's no big deal if Chuck Schumer's insulting the bill. And Rand Paul and Tom Massey tend to be heretics anyway. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They just want to criticize, unlike Ron Johnson, who says, I don't like elements of the bill, but I want to make it better. That's, to me, the right approach. Ted Cruz, same thing, right approach. But I think the Elon Musk thing really caught the president by surprise. And I hear he is furious. But I think he's so smart to keep his powder dry, because he just plays into what critics would have to say. The right can't get out of their own way. Instead, just you have a goal, pass it. Elon Musk is not in the Senate or the House. Don't worry about it.
Can I offer a different perspective, Ainsley? As someone who is supportive of the president's agenda, I am upset with Congress right now. I don't blame the president for the big, beautiful bill. I blame Congress because they go to their constituents every single election and they say they're going to cut spending, cut. And it doesn't seem like there's a willingness to do that. Even the same thing for the SALT deduction. It's not conservative at all. We should not be subsidizing California and New York. And I think from Elon's perspective, you're going to see him getting involved in the primary contest. Now, the president has a different goal. He has to get the bill passed. He has to bring people together, and he understands that it's hanging on by a thread. So, of course, he's going to have that position. But I don't think Elon is anti-MAGA now or anti-the president now. He worked so hard, put a lot of stuff on the line to get a lot of wasteful stuff cut, and it doesn't seem like Congress is showing that same willingness.
I thought Elon was very respectful in some of the original interviews, just saying, look, we have differences. I don't agree with him on everything. But this latest comment about calling the big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination, I was shocked to hear him say that.
Yes, because it's trying to get Donald Trump's attention. He wants a reply. He wants a reply from the big dog. That's what he wants. That's what every big dog wants. You want the other big dog. That's how it works, okay? Elon is waiting for a reply from Trump. And that is going to be the most talked about reply probably of all time. But I don't think Elon deserves a reply from Trump. Trump should focus on the big, beautiful bill. Make sure you do your magic. Make sure it passes. Or whatever alteration you're trying to do on the bill, do it, or make sure the bill passes. That's all that matters to Trump. Forget about Elon Musk, because midterms are coming, 2026. If you fail the American people, you will lose in 2026.
I can understand why the president would not be happy about that. This is someone who worked on his team. But you don't have to agree completely. And Lawrence, I understand your thoughts. But when I look at this bill, if it is going to increase the deficit, and we're going to play a soundbite from John Thune that you had a great interview with him on radio where he says that's not going to happen. But you're getting so many other cuts. Donald Trump has said, if we don't pass this big, beautiful bill, your taxes are going to go up 65%.
Which is true.
These tax cuts happened in 2017. He wants to extend them, not only extend them, make them permanent. So I'm all in favor of that. I don't want 65% of my paycheck taken out, or them to increase even that much. I also like no tax on tips. I was a server for many, many years. Y'all probably were too. Many people out there look at Nevada. That's their livelihood. So I love that. No tax on Social Security. If you're living on a fixed income, we interviewed 1 million people in those diners. That's just going to be
tax breaks. They're going to. You got to still pay tax Social Security. They're going to substitute that. For
I thought it was no tax on Social Security.
That was the goal, but they didn't execute.
Okay, but it's going to be better than it was, right?
Right.
Okay, it's going to be lower. So that's what. When I look at the big picture, that's better.
Right.
But John, here's John Thune's interview on your radio show.
He says it's not going to add to the deficit. Listen up.
Will this lead to higher deficits? And the answer to that is no. You're going to get growth in the economy. And when the economy, again, is growing and expanding, you get more government revenue. Add to that the almost a couple $1 trillion in cuts that are in the bill, and you have the most significant reduction in spending and biggest amount of savings in history in this legislation. So, and if you look at CBO, Brian, in the past, they've been, they have a long history of just flat being wrong. They scored the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, and the economy grew 5% more than what they projected. Revenues were $1.5 trillion higher than what they projected in 2017. And when the Democrats passed their so-called Inflation Reduction Act last year, CBO missed the mark on energy provisions by about 400%. One thing we do know is when we reduce taxes and cut regulations and have an abundant energy supply in this country, the economy grows and expands.
So he says they're going to go back and they're going to work on different spending issues over the next 3 years. But for this to pass, to lay the groundwork to launch it, the CBO looked at this and said, we project 1.8% growth. We have never had such anemic 1.8% growth over the course of 10 years. He believes it's going to be 2 and 3. So if you're bringing in more revenue, that would wipe out the deficit that comes in. We have to add more money to the Pentagon, and I think we need more money for the border. Those are the two areas in which the president's increased spending. I don't know what the fight is on that.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earl.
So, C. Shelley, our esteemed.
They're going to fight for.
Our esteemed moderator, C. Shelley, says, how many people in the chat right now would survive greed down, which means no power? I would say really 95% of Americans cannot survive greed down. See, it is the truth, okay? 95, probably 98% of Americans cannot survive greed down. So there better be no greed down.
9:32 in New York. Let's get to the story of the day. Elon Musk taking a big swipe at President Trump's big and beautiful bill, only days after promising to stay close to him as a friend and advisor. Senate Majority Leader John Thune's with us. And sir, good morning to you. Thank you for your time. We're still waiting for maybe a true social to come from the White House. It has not come directly yet to that response from Elon Musk, but we'll wait. Sir, here is part of what Musk said online. He said, this massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional bill is a disgusting abomination. And as you know, Senator, that's not all he said. Your reaction?
Well, look, Bill, I mean, everybody's going to come to different conclusions about this, but a lot of people are making evaluations of this bill based upon a static scoring model used by Washington, D.C. scorekeepers that missed the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act economic growth by 5.4%, underestimated revenue by $1.5 trillion, missed the energy subsidies in the so-called Inflation Reduction Act by 400%. I mean, these people don't have a really good track record when it comes to scorekeeping. What we know is this: when you reduce taxes on the American people and on small businesses, there is an incentive to invest more. When you invest more, they're better paying jobs created, people are making money, they're taking realizations, they're paying more in taxes. That means tax revenue goes up. So there are just a lot of analysis around this bill that isn't accurately reflecting what will happen when all these policies are put into place. And by the way, it will be the biggest spending reduction in history. There's just no question about that. It's going to have huge savings in it, and we're hoping to enhance that here in the Senate.
Elon Musk is getting some strange new respect from Senate Democrats who last week, I think, hated him. But anyway, take a look at this.
And say something I didn't think was imaginable. I agree with Elon Musk.
Breaking news, Elon Musk and I agree with each other.
To be very clear, this is not a big, beautiful bill. It's a big, beautiful betrayal of the middle class.
I think they agree for the wrong reasons or for different reasons. But I also wanted to ask you about this. Your strategy has been a little different from others in the past and even from the House side, which is you met with President Trump early on in this process as this ball has gone into your court on the Senate side. Is that a strategy for you to make sure that you can keep all of these cats herded going in the right direction, to have him with you in lockstep all the way through?
Well, Dana, as you know, the president is the closer, and ultimately it'll be up to him to help bring some of these votes home. But we've been working closely with the White House. The president's priorities in this have been very clear. It's energy dominance, it's modernizing the military, it's securing the border, it's preventing a $4.5 trillion tax increase at the end of this year, and it's achieving historic savings when it comes to federal spending. So those are all priorities that are addressed in here, and we're working with him and his team to refine what the House did, strengthen it, improve upon it, and make it the best bill possible. But at the end of the day, we're going to achieve those objectives, and we need to stay focused on that. And yes, we have different people who have different opinions here in the Senate about what's the best way to do that. But at the end of the day, everybody is rowing in the same direction, and everybody knows we can't afford to allow a $4.5 trillion tax increase at the end of this year. And that's what the Democrats are advocating for. When you heard them all yesterday, they're out there. That's what they're for. They are fighting for. They're going to fight for a huge increase, tax increase on the American people and on small business at the end of the year.
Sir, you said yesterday you're going to proceed full speed ahead. I have no doubt that that will be your intent. However, Peter Doocy was reporting 30 minutes ago that the Axios report appears to be accurate based on some of the White House people he spoke to. In that report, they talk about the cuts for electric vehicle tax credits that may have upset Musk thinking about Tesla, that Starlink will not be used by the FAA for the transfiguration of the air traffic control system, and also his guy, Jared Isaacson, to be the head of NASA. He was pulled by the president late on Saturday night. Can you confirm today that that was the rub for Musk to go the way he did yesterday with the word and language?
Yeah, I can't comment on what people's personal motivations are. All I know is this, Bill. At the end of the day, we have a job to do. We've got to take the long view. We want to succeed on behalf of the American people. And President Trump ran on an agenda. We are going to do everything we can here in the Senate and the House to get that agenda across the finish line. And yes, there are going to be people out there, and there are going to be detractors and different points of view and opinions, and that's all fine and good. But in the Senate, it's 51 votes. In the House, it's 218 to get a bill we can put on the president's desk that will transform this country. And you will see economic growth unlike anything you've ever seen before. Working families will get a huge amount of tax relief. We will avoid that $4.5 trillion tax increase at the end of the year and restore America's energy dominance. These are all things that are a part of this agenda, what the president ran on. We are committed to making sure that he succeeds and that we succeed in delivering for the American people.
Senator Rand Paul is one of those votes you'd want to try to get. He is at this moment is a no. He was on with Will Cain yesterday.
My objection to the bill isn't about the tax cuts, and it isn't about those calculations. My objection to the bill is they're going to raise the debt ceiling more than they ever have, $5 trillion, and that this will be the largest increase in the debt ceiling ever. And if the Republicans all vote for it, the Republicans will own the debt.
So he is a no on that, and he has got concerns going forward for the Republicans. Do you share them?
Well, I think that the debt is unsustainably high, and that's why we have to do something to get it down, Dana. And the way you do that is you get growth in the economy through pro-growth policies, the things I just mentioned, generates more government revenue, and you restrain the growth in government spending. And pretty soon things start coming into balance. But you can't do something about the debt limit that he referenced unless you're actually passing bills like what we're talking about here, which has the largest spending reduction in history included as part of it. So you got to start you got to start somewhere, and I think what this bill does is it makes an important down payment on ensuring that in the future those deficits and those debt starts going downwards instead of continuing upwards like it is today.
Well, June 4th today, the proposed deadline was in 1 month. Sir, thank you for your time today. And
good to be with you.
We hope to speak to you again very soon.
Sure we will. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right. Here we go. Epstein files. Here we go.
Bongino, Dan, sorry about that technical error. All right. I was asking you, you mentioned the drone threat. You mentioned China. I mentioned we have known terrorists, known assassination squads, cartel members, gang members, drug dealers in the country. So it's worse than you thought, is what you're explaining to us. And that means you have to prioritize your manpower, including 1 million man-hours spent on immigration and finding these unvetted illegals that have these horrific track records. You know, let me scroll, for example. I scrolled this during the campaign. Yeah. Americans that were murdered, raped, and victims of violent crime. No Democrat ever, cared. They told us the border was secure and the border was closed. I'll scroll the names. Explain how you prioritize that.
Yeah, it's manpower triage has become Cash and I our number one job. The FBI portfolio responsibility, Sean, hasn't changed. The counter-terror mission, in other words, we can't have New York, D.C., or L.A. go boom. Obviously, we wake up every day, Cash and I in that briefing. That's always going to be priority number one. But kind of co-equal priorities right now underneath that, the massive cyber threat, the counterintelligence threat. You just accurately indicated the number of people that were that flooded in through the southern border and some through the northern border as well. There are people here, let's be very clear, who want to do bad things. I think that's fairly obvious. We have our FBI teams out there at 4 a.m. and 5 a.m. They can tell you, and they're happy to do it, out there working with HSI, ERO, and removing these people from the country while still preventing a terror attack, investigating terror attacks that do happen. And I'm going to add another thing, Sean. We're not the Federal Bureau of freaking word games anymore, okay? It's the Federal Bureau of Investigation. When some guy shows up at a scene, and I'm getting an intel stream from our information center that indicates he threw an incendiary device, okay, while screaming very specific words with multiple witnesses and video, we're damn well going to investigate it. Listen to me, investigate it as targeted violence and a terror attack. You don't like it, you don't have to follow my official Twitter. But I saw a whole bunch of people losing their minds. What the hell you want us to investigate it as? A freaking grand larceny auto? We're investigating it as a terror attack because that's the information we have. And we're not going to start playing euphemisms games and word games anymore. We're not doing it. We're the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and we're going to investigate properly.
For those, and it's kind of a lightning round because I don't have enough time unless I gave you the whole hour, and it would be worth doing it. But for people like me, I'm one of them that wants answers to the Epstein file issue and what happened. Yeah. And I never knew there were 10,000 hours of tapes. And was it suicide? You said there's a tape, or JFK, RFK, MLK files. All of that is still coming, correct?
Yeah, JFK, we're done. The FBI's equities in that, we've already released that. RFK, I got to check back on that one. There is more coming on the Epstein files. Listen, I know this is a hot potato for folks. I totally understand. My comments were clear. I'm not paid for my opinions anymore. I work for the taxpayer now. I'm paid on evidence. That's it. The evidence we have in our files clearly indicates that it was, in fact, a suicide. We do have video. It's not the greatest video in the world. I don't want to set expectations on fire. However, the video does show in that specific block that he goes in, made a phone call. You'll see 12 hours of guards going to basically check on him, come back. You'll see no one really comes out in that bay, in that area, than him. There's no one in there. When you combine that with the other evidence we will be releasing in the coming weeks, we're still finalizing some of the products. I think it's pretty clear. However, as I've clearly indicated in some of my tweets on my official account, you know, listen, investigations, if new information surfaces in the future on any of these cases, we're always open. I'm just telling you there's nothing there in the file at all that indicates anything other than, in fact, a suicide.
Let me ask you about, and again, a lightning round. Let's go quickly. COVID origins. Are we going to find out information that the government lied to us?
You're damn right you are. We're all over that. The minute I got in there in that job, I said, hey,
they
get everybody
purposely
in
lied to the American people. They purposely lied to us.
Yeah, listen, that's the one I'm the most optimistic about. I was pretty clear on my social media account that I ordered that case immediately to be looked into again. We have a great investigator on it, and I think we should see action on that one shortly.
Let me ask you about this. The prior FBI director, or directors, let's say, you know, we saw a double standard when it came to the Mar-a-Lago raid and top secret and classified information, Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton. Did you see any evidence? Has any evidence emerged that former directors may have tried to cover their tracks? And you did mention the other day that maybe traps were being set for you and Cash.
Well, I'll address you addressed the Mar-a-Lago raid.
Action was taken on that because it involves human resources issues. I can't make specific comments, but anyone telling you we didn't action that is lying to you, absolutely lying to you. I assure you, we did.
Was it political, in other words? Was that a political decision?
Sean, because it involves some specific HR actions we had to take. I don't want to get into specifics on that, but I'll leave it at this. We found some really troubling items in there that we actioned immediately, to say the least. Also,
so is it fair to say that a double standard was applied in that case in terms of top secret classified information? Is that fair?
Well, I think that's fairly clear when you look at how two cases were handled there. And that's why we did a scrub immediately of holdings. And like I said, we had to take action on that immediately. And there was another case. You brought up another case. You brought up the other directors. Comey, as a matter of fact, the guy who has a lot to say, ironically, about me and Cash, and that's fine. He's allowed an opinion. He is a free American citizen like anyone else. But we found items. I addressed this on Fox and Friends, and I can go into a little bit more detail, but we found things. We found documents that were not where they should have been, and they were not good, flattering documents for Jim Comey. So the hubris displayed from a man like Jim Comey, who disgraced the FBI numerous times with his role in Crossfire Hurricane and other abominations, it's just kind of stunning that he continues to attack our leadership when we have to clean up the mess Jim Comey created as we continue to find stuff from his era and vintage.
Well, he signed 3 of the 4 FISA warrants that were all based. The bulk of information presented to the FISA court was the dirty Russian disinformation dossier that Hillary Clinton paid for. Between that and the origins of Crossfire Hurricane, are you finding evidence that they knew damn well that that was false and that they did it for political reason, that in fact the FBI, what is supposed to be the world's premier law enforcement agency, was politicized and weaponized?
I think of all the troubling things I've seen so far on the reform agenda, the Crossfire Hurricane documents and what we found are those. Now, again, I've seen some commentary because I enjoy the feedback. I do. I like to hear. And people are wondering, where are the documents? Well, the documents are coming out. The problem with the documents coming out, and Director Patel has said this multiple times, it is a rolling production of Crossfire Hurricane documents. Well, you may ask, fair enough, why the hell is it rolling? Get it all out. Because we don't have it all. Yeah. Well, why don't you have it all? Because nobody gave it to us all. Well, why didn't they do that? Exactly. We're finding stuff. We have a lot of good people working on it, I promise you. But the bad people kind of knew what they were doing. So the rolling production is rolling for a reason. As soon as we find this stuff, and other intelligence agencies have some equities in it too, and we can clear that through the process, we're getting it out. Members of Congress and the U.S. Senate that have reached out, we're getting them the stuff as soon as it comes in. And yes, one of the specific documents I read indicates to me that there was a large degree of malfeasance here. We're not just talking misfeasance.
Let me ask you about, are you going to be looking into, Cash and Pam, any potential collusion between the DOJ, Letitia James, the novel legal theory of Alvin Bragg or Nathan Wade or Fani Willis and the DOJ? Is that something? Has anything come up? Is there any way to determine whether or not evidence was destroyed in any of these cases?
Well, there's always a way to determine that. I don't want to comment on that specific case right now for a reason. I don't want to get ahead of the Department of Justice on that. But I want to say this. You know, the FBI obviously has the public corruption portfolio. And yes, if you are a corrupt politician out there, if you are engaged in behavior, you know what you're doing, we're going to find you. I promise. No one is going to get off. The days of selecting and putting your partisan bias on and taking care of your friends, those days are over. You know what, Sean? I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. Well, maybe outside of you and a couple of, I don't care. I didn't come here for the money. I didn't come here to make, I know.
No, you didn't go there for the money. I can tell people that for sure. No, I didn't come here to make friends. I don't give a damn about friends. I don't have any friends. I don't want any friends. I got my wife, I got you, and I got a small crew of people. So I don't need any friends. But
If you're
you want a friend in
politician,
D.C.,
screwing
get a
around,
dog.
we're coming for you.
That'll help.
Yeah, exactly. You want a friend in D.C., right? Go get a Labradoodle like I have, because there are no friends in D.C. You've been doing this, what, 30 years? There are no friends here.
Let me ask you this. White House cocaine, Dobbs decision, traditional Catholics, peaceful abortion protesters, treatment of parents at school board meetings. I mean, Dan, I mean, we covered this extensively. When you were in the media, you covered it extensively. All seem, on the surface, to be extreme abuses of power. Is this something we will get answers to?
Yeah, I'm on that. I put that out in my my account as well. Yeah, we're looking into that. The pipe bomb case, which immediately, again, day one, I don't mean that figuratively. I mean, literally day one, after I swore in, I said, what do we got? What do we got? I said, get me a team. I want to hear everything. Get them in, brief. I want to see the whole thing. Pipe bomb case, Dobbs. We've gotten a lot of good information. It was a serious case. You had threats made to Supreme Court justices. You know, I get a kick out of it on social media when people are like, oh, this case isn't a big deal. I don't care. Well, I don't care that you don't care. I care. This caused a big, huge, there may have been a threat case for a Supreme Court justice. There is potential obstruction here. This is an enormous case. Cocaine in the White House. Again, you know, I'm not interested in, you don't care what, a hazardous substance made its way into the White House. We didn't know what it was, and we don't seem to have answers as to what it was. Well, we're going to get them. I've got a great team on it. That was another case. I've been very clear on this. We're taking another look at this stuff. The public, Sean, needs to trust us again. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm under no illusions that in the now 3 months I've been here, all of a sudden, oh, great, Dan Bongino's in charge. We trust you again. That's BS. Trust is for fools. Results matter. I'm not asking you to trust me.
Trust,
I can't
but
say
verify.
enough. Results. Yeah, verify is all that matters. You don't have to trust me. I don't want anybody's trust.
All right, let me ask the last question then. Because I've known you for so long, and I've talked to too many people, not just you, many people, many sources, many people that know a lot more than I know, and that they're all shocked at the threat level on so many different levels. Maybe last word to manage expectations of people, prioritizing safety, and a promise that everything we discussed and brought up tonight, we're going to, including cocaine in the White House and peacefully protesting pro-life people and traditional Catholics and et cetera, that also will be gotten to. Epstein will be gotten to. MLK, RFK, JFK, all of that. But you need. Where will we be a year from now?
Yeah, someone asked me that on a special agent in charge conference call the other day. Where do you envision the FBI a year from now? Well, I'll tell you. I'll give you that answer. A year from now, I want the FBI to have played a key role in the deportation of hundreds of thousands of violent criminals from the United States. I want the FBI to have thwarted multiple terror plots that we can't tell you about every day. Sean, every morning we do a briefing, Cash and I, with our ops directors. We can't sit here and take a victory lap every time something doesn't go boom. Matter of fact, we almost never do it because we can't. I want to make sure that our counterintelligence operation is top-notch, that the ever-present threat of the Chinese Communist Party infiltrating our systems, cyber spying on us, that by the end of the year we've made significant progress. I want to be sure the drone threat, that we've taken action on it, not just talked about it. We're getting money, assets, and teams in place. And I want to be sure we can look back to the American people and say, look, with President Trump's leadership, Attorney General Bondi and Director Patel, the murder rate is at a historic low. Crime rates have gone down. Okay. The border is sealed, and your FBI took a part in that.
And then we'll also get to the bottom of these other issues, and that's your pledge, Cash's pledge, and Pam's pledge, then the President's pledge. People want to know that. I'm
looking you in the eye. Listen to me through this camera. You have my word. We are on it.
Okay.
We are on it.
Dan Bongino, ladies and gentlemen.
You've been very generous with your time and your patience.
Democrats suddenly in love with the guy they torched Teslas over, called a Nazi and recently accused of genocide. Elon Musk taking issue with President Trump's big, beautiful bill, calling it a disgusting abomination, which he fears is bankrupting America. The Democrats wasting no time pouncing on Musk's comments.
Breaking news, Elon Musk and I agree with each other. Okay. Every single Republican who voted for the one big, ugly bill should be ashamed of themselves.
Say something I didn't think was imaginable. I agree with Elon Musk.
Now that the national divorce is happening with Elon Musk, and I'm a child of divorce, okay? I mean, who's going to get big balls? I'm worried about him in the divorce. The children always get caught in the middle, right? And so I just, if he's out there, I just want him to know we're rooting for him.
And the liberal media exploding in delight over the big, beautiful beef.
Breaking up is hard to do. And that is exactly what is going on here.
This is what it's like outside the tent, with Elon Musk outside the tent, which is not a good place for the Trump administration to be, because he has a huge platform.
If you attack Donald Trump and Donald Trump says nothing, Donald Trump's silence is the biggest expression of fear that he has.
Trump versus Elon, what an unexpected, I'm not sure who to root for. It's like Diddy versus R. Kelly.
All right, Dennis, the Democrats are delighting in this.
Yes, it's a strange new respect, although it is very disingenuous of them to say they agree with Elon Musk. They agree that they don't like the big, beautiful bill, but for very different reasons. The Democrats want to spend a lot more. Elon Musk is saying we really need to cut more. And he's not wrong. And I think that if we were in a perfect world, there would be a lot of different cuts. But one of the most important things that this bill does is for someone who's going to be a trillionaire, they might not care about the tax cuts in this bill. But if you're a middle-class taxpayer, you care a lot. And so the bill needs to get done. Right now, I just feel like I just step back. I don't deal with all of the details in it every day and get into the nitty-gritty of it, because I believe this. The bill is going to get done at the end of the day. Neither side is going to really like it that much, but it'll get done. We'll fund the government. Nothing much will change, and then we will go on to whatever is next.
Greg, they're telling me in my ear that Musk just took his Tesla back from Trump.
Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. For a normal thinking person, you can hold two thoughts in your head. The bill isn't where the cuts should be, but it's what needs to be done now. It's not that hard. And actually, it's wonderful that they're that transparent. This argument is not happening behind closed doors. No one is lying to you about Trump's mental state. Nobody's telling you, oh, they're going on picnics together. You can see it. There's no conspiracy, no corruption. When Republicans, when in Trump's administration, when something's going down, you see it. This is a reconciliation, not an appropriations bill. There's no mechanism for reductions for like 99% of the government, what the government does. But that's going to come later. But we don't have time to explain that. And I get why Musk is mad, because Musk, he wants to put a rocket in space. He's going to do it. Right. So he's just impatient. But it's important that he's impatient. We need to have that. In the A block, we talked about immigration. In the B block, we're talking about budget. The next block, crime. Suddenly, how adult did this country become? The A block, immigration. B, budget. C, crime. No gender, no race, no book bans, no Pride Month. And why? Because Trump and Musk, through their deeds, deliberately focused attention on the issues that actually matter. And so, the Dems always say we need to have a conversation. Well, we're actually having the conversation, and it's right out there in front of you. You should be really happy. I think it sucks to be a Democrat because your life is wholly negative. If you wake up rooting for failure and it happens, we as a country fail. If you wake up rooting for failure and we don't fail, then you're dejected. So your satisfaction is rooted in failure, and your dissatisfaction is rooted in success. That means if you align to their thinking, you're going to lose either way.
Ooh, would you care to respond to that?
Not a ton, but I know that I have to some degree. I mean, I'm a pretty happy Democrat.
You are, but that's because you're around us.
That's right.
Oh, it's my conservative lift that I get every day
Yes,
from 5
it
to
is.
6 p.m.
We keep you
Glass half
real.
full.
We keep you real. You don't drift off into some far left loony bin.
I mean, sometimes. But no one is in love with Elon Musk. Like, politics is a game. And J.D. Vance didn't like Donald Trump a whole lot, right? Excited America's Hitler. Now he's the vice president. Marco Rubio has all the other jobs in the government, and he hated Donald Trump. Ted Cruz has forgiven him for saying that his wife is super ugly and saying that his dad was a murderer, right? Yeah. Didn't I say that about truckers? Anyway,
It was only half right.
where it's
But you're saying
so
Trump
for this
is forgiven.
in this particular moment, we have something in common with Elon Musk. We should definitely leverage it. That's what's important. But I do think that Republicans, including my dear colleagues here at the table, would prefer that we were talking about Elon Musk versus the brass tacks of the bill itself. So the final CBO scoring came out today.
Oh boy.
2.4 trillion. Yeah, oh boy. 2.4 trillion to the deficit, 3.7 trillion in tax cuts, 16 million all in total between Medicaid cuts and Obamacare credit tax cuts going off their health insurance. That's what matters. And Steve Bannon, a huge supporter of President Trump, feels the same as Elon Musk does about it. He says you're going to have to raise taxes. And the Republicans have a new talking point. Mike Johnson was doing this on the Sunday shows. Lutnick's tried it, Besant's tried, where they say, oh, the CBO, it's a Democratic organization. It's run by a Bush appointee who's only ever donated once to a candidate, and it was a Republican in 2014. But the CBO was fine in 2018 and 2019 when their projections were 99.5% accurate, grading Trump's bill. But because it's
But Jessica, let's just be honest. I worked on Capitol Hill starting in 1996. You can do the math. Okay. Ever since then, anybody who is president and doesn't have they hate the CBO. And Biden, they hated the CBO
but
then.
The point is that it's accurate, and they're saying that it's a lie.
I actually don't think that it's correct to say that it's accurate. I think that it is complicated and complex and difficult, and you can argue it in all these different ways. You can get different people to use different numbers. But the Biden people hated CBO, and now the Trump people hate CBO. It's like it always happens. It's been going on
we
since...
can all agree that this is going to add to the deficit,
No,
and that we
that's
don't need
not what she
3
said.
CBO doesn't agree with that.
Yes, it does.
No, it doesn't.
2.4 trillion.
They said
and
that
do you
nearly
need 3.7 trillion
it would
in
save
tax cuts?
1.7 trillion in mandatory spending. Maybe it's because you didn't factor in the tax cuts, but I don't know.
When you add in the revenue also from the tariffs, the deficit is no longer an
The
issue.
tariffs that are
And
gonna
the
spike
CBO,
inflation.
actually, when it comes to what they've been scoring, you could say is not accurate, and many would say is garbage in terms of the numbers they came up with. But let's get back to Elon Musk. When Elon Musk decided he wanted to get involved in politics, Democrats loved it because they had run everything they could against Donald Trump. Nothing had worked. They figured, now, great, we have this boogeyman, and they could not stop talking about Doe showing up in front of federal government agencies, defending things like USAID, and so on and so forth. Now, all of a sudden, they have a disagreement in a transparent way, and you have Chuck Schumer just hours after essentially saying he's the worst person on the planet, saying that he agrees with him. Now, you can't go from calling someone a Nazi to then saying, we agree with them, unless you're a Democrat. Because if you're a Republican, they would say that you're endorsing white supremacy and on and on and
What
on.
about J.D. Vance and Trump?
So the point is that Elon Musk has this disagreement. We will see what the Senate comes up with. The Senate or the White House rather, has sent up this rescissions package from the Office of Budget and Management to codify a lot of these DOGE cuts. Whether the Congress will do that is a whole other question. But the DOGE cuts that the Democrats protested, including in violent ways at Tesla dealerships, are getting sent up to the Hill for debate in a separate piece of legislation. So Democrats have a problem with authenticity. Here's just another example. 1 second they hate Elon Musk, and another when they can use him for political purpose, they're happy to do so.
That was a great special report, all-star panel.
Yeah.
Well done, everybody.
Good. Where's him? Where am I?
Up
Why
next,
am I not there?
Eric Swalwell claims he secretly gossips with
So there you go, Jesse. We need illegals to wipe our asses. It's true. The View actually needs a truckload of migrants every morning.
I found out about a bidet. It was a couple years ago on the show. That's the way to go.
Okay.
She's saying basically we need to bring in an
Another
underclass
import.
to wipe our... That's disgusting. Can we talk about the Democrats for a second? They're
Sure.
finally anti-mask, Greg.
Mhm.
We finally said you got to take the mask off. They should just tell this congressman there's long COVID.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to stop the spread. So if Trantifa can put a mask on to commit crime, why can't ICE put a mask on to stop it? Because this is an option for these ICE agents.
Mhm.
They're getting doxxed. Their families are getting threatened. This isn't a nationwide policy. They're doing it to protect their identities from cartel bounties. A lot of law enforcement people wear masks. DEA agents wear masks. These gang task force guys wear masks. Some of these elite military operators use masks because they don't want Al-Qaeda to know who they are. The top House Democrat says he wants to unmask ICE agents. The most popular Democrat, AOC, says she wants to abolish ICE. Walt says ICE is the Gestapo. Joe Biden accused border agents of whipping migrants on horseback, and they're wondering why they don't attract men, Greg. Like, I wonder, maybe it's because you guys are having margaritas with MS-13 and not margaritas with ICE. Why don't they just thank ICE for protecting the community? They brought in the cartels, and now they're attacking the guys that are trying to get them out of here. No bueno.
That is Spanish.
That's no good.
Yes, thank you. You know, Dana, Jesse, makes the point that, ICE agents have a function to remove and deport illegals from the United States. After the Boulder attack, it's obviously necessary. And again, the Dems choose in the 2080, they choose the other side.
I actually wrote, how stupid can they be? Deporting criminal illegal immigrants remains the most popular thing President Trump is doing. Out of all of them, that's the most popular thing. And the Democrats are attacking ICE. And it reminds me of their instincts on defund the police and where that led. And where it led the party, not just practically speaking and the consequences of that, but also, if you remember, during the Roe v. Wade decision at the Supreme Court, those justices were, one that went after, whatever you think about the merits of it, but the guy who said he wanted to kill Brett Kavanaugh and his family and had materials in order to do that, then they were harassed. And the senators on the Democratic side would not weigh in. And the Biden administration in particular would not weigh in to help protect the justices. And so that was extremely wrong. I also feel like Hakeem Jeffries he looks like he is uninspired. He seems defeated. And I've been trying to think of what can the Democrats do to demonstrate that they are serious about making a change and making a pivot. And the media will only help you make a pivot if you make a significant move. And I'm beginning to think that Democrats will look at their polling numbers and think that maybe they need a shakeup on the leadership side.
What say you, Jessica?
I think they already think that on the Senate side. The House doesn't feel that way at this particular moment. And definitely, we're going to talk about it in the next block, feel that there's a big opening with the reconciliation bill to make a lot of headway against the Republicans. In terms of the masking situation, that guy who's threatening those ICE agents, throw the book at him. You can't do that. You shouldn't be attacking law enforcement. But you really can't make a cogent argument for why these people need to be wearing masks, except for the fact that A, Trump loves a good show, which is why he has Kristi Noem wearing her little vest and posing in front of CCOT and wants it to look tough and bad. And
you can't say it's a safety issue?
I did about that specific issue there, but when you look at the statistics of who they're actually arresting, you know that they're wearing masks because they're not making good on the promises that they made to the American people of arresting criminals. 70% of the people—
They're wearing masks because they're embarrassed? Is that what you're saying, Jessica?
Yeah, I do think that they're
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Well, I would be, if I was the
mind
ICE
reading
agent—
and it's absurd.
You have
It's
no
mind
evidence.
reading and it's absurd.
Well, they should be ashamed of what they're doing. If you are the ICE agent that's picking up a 17-year-old kid on the way to volleyball practice who's been here since he was 5 in Massachusetts, or there was a Missouri woman who's been here for 20 years, mother of 3, going to a routine check-in that's being arrested. And you know what they're doing? They're trying to satisfy Stephen Miller. The conservative Washington Examiner, a conservative paper, has this quote out of a private meeting where Stephen Miller is screaming at agents, what do you mean you're going after criminals? Why aren't you at Home Depot? Why aren't you at 7-Eleven? They want to pick up everybody who is here illegally, which is not what he campaigned on. He said we're going to get the bad hombres and the criminals out of here. So yes, I think if you are showing up to detain a 17-year-old, that you should be wearing a mask and you should be embarrassed of what you're doing.
Well, wow. I don't think that's why they wear a mask. Again, Katie, it's always—
Is it for the show,
they always say they're for the function. Oh, we're for an immigration process, but we don't like how it's done.
Right.
Oh, they shouldn't be wearing masks. Do you know that if they stopped wearing masks, you can bet they'll find something else?
Yeah.
Why,
Which means that
why is
they
he
don't
wearing
really,
a belt?
They don't really want it to happen at all, which is they're not calling for masks to be taken off of the rioters on college campuses. They were fine with masks during the summer of 2020 when we had the most expensive riots and deadly riots in the history of the country. They're fine with criminals who are just going into regular businesses in cities across the country wearing masks. But oh no, ICE agents going after hardened criminals in our cities that Democrats want to dox now aren't allowed to cover their face. And before Democrats lost their minds and started defending criminals and terrorists, years ago, decades ago, ICE agents and others in these kinds of positions were wearing masks. This is not a new phenomenon, but what is new is Democrats at the highest order of leadership in the United States Congress saying they're going to dox and find these people who voluntarily sign up to go after every single day people who are convicted murderers, who are convicted rapists, who are armed and dangerous. They voluntarily sign up for these jobs, which is the whole point. The Democrats, just like defund the police, want to sow this environment of making an intimidation. They don't want people to sign up to be ICE agents. They want to make sure that if you decide to serve your country and to protect your community, that they will do everything they can to ruin your life. We've seen this happen over and over again. We saw it with Border Patrol. We've seen it with the police, until, of course, it affects their family. And then all of a sudden, they change their perspective, and they're happy to have ICE come into their community to remove these people. But until then, it's all the peasants who have to deal with the consequences of letting these criminals in the first place, and then having Democrats defend them and force the American people to deal with them not being removed.
Does it matter that 70% haven't been convicted of anything?
They're illegal, Jessica.
They're here illegally.
Jessica, you don't want to go down this road.
Yes, I do.
You should apologize.
It's no longer about the mask.
You should apologize to the ICE agents that you just disgraced. You should apologize to them. They're not humiliated. They swore an oath to uphold the law of the country, and they're getting a lot of bad hombres out of here.
30%.
The
bad
concept,
70%.
Jessica, you broke into the country. You're going
They
home.
didn't.
I'm
Most
sorry.
of these people came in through an asylum
do you
process.
think
You can still be here illegally
Jessica,
and gone through a port
they're
of entry.
enforcing the law of the land. I'm sorry you don't like that, but those are the breaks.
it's this contrast. The concept of enforcement is an adult theme. Upset about masks is infantile. And this happens in every damn issue. You come at it with an adult, this is what needs to be done. Oh, but wait, what about this? Stupid. Sorry. Anyway.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey.
KJP is now leaving.
There's a giant lawn party at the White
Democrat
House
Party.
tonight.
Karine Jean-Pierre, the former White House press secretary, is leaving the Democrat Party. Oh, okay. Where is she going? To the Republican Party? I don't think so. She's an independent. She's followed in Jake Tapper's footsteps. Wonderful.
Nope, not Trump's birthday yet. This was the summer soiree. Think of a summer State of the Union minus Pelosi and the Panicans. Instead, 3,000 Trump staffers and a whole lot of Stephen Miller. And of course, 47.
We've never done this before, you know that, right? They didn't do it. The previous administration wouldn't have thought of doing it. But we're going to do it for 4 more years. I don't know, maybe 8 more years. 6 months ago, we had a nation that was as cold as ice. It was cold. The whole world was laughing at us. And they're not laughing anymore, that I can tell you now, because of the people here tonight. We have the hottest, most talked about country anywhere in the world.
The party was sponsored by McDonald's and Anheuser-Busch, which I guess means you and I, the taxpayers, we didn't pay for it. They did. The menu? Quarter pounders and beer. And the Navy band performing, quote, classic songs. The country deserves a soiree after what Biden did to it. Biden's last White House party, pride flags and trans flashers. Can't forget about Juneteenth, the night AutoPen froze in front of the world. Washington's under renovation. Even if you're nasty, you still have a seat at the soiree.
If you're a reporter, a White House reporter in D.C., and you are going to be really adversarial and tough, but fair, on Trump, you get like snaps all across town. You get invited to like every single garden party and book party imaginable. But if you do it, with Biden or even with Obama, like there is like a different social like cost, and I do think it affects the reporting.
One exception: if you don't acknowledge the Gulf of America, you're out. Those are the rules. JD has another rule: don't be an ignorant academic.
There are politicians out there they've just been politicians. You are someone who was an intellectual first. Some people don't like the word intellectual, but I mean it in the good sense of the term. You were writing for National Review.
I come here for free and you insult me and you call me an intellectual.
Remind
me that I wrote for National Review. What a this guy is.
But most people want in on the fun, even the ones you'd never suspect, like the Binder, the official mouthpiece of the Biden White House. Binder has some breaking news. She's transitioning and adopting new pronouns. She's indie.
Hi, I'm Corinne Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Corinne, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us?
Binder shopping for sweet potatoes at the grocery store, and customers are asking her about vulnerable communities. How about Binder, who controlled the auto pen? Did you know he had cancer? Did he really get lost in the closet? Binder spent 2 years lying from a podium, and now she wants to tell us the truth? Look at the name of the book, Inside a Broken White House. Now she's telling us the White House was broken. Wait a second. Who else wrote a book about this? Yeah, Tapper. Binder's now DEI Tapper. I wonder who got paid more. And there's nothing noble about this turncoat, remember?
Do you believe that the president is as sharp today as he was when he took this job? Have you seen any slowdowns?
What I can say is this is a president who is strong and resolute in delivering for the American people. That's what I see.
So he's as sharp as ever?
He is as sharp as ever, as I have known him to be in my engagement and my experience with him.
Binder invented the word cheap fake. She told you this real video of Biden getting lost in an Italian field was fake. Now she's saying, yeah, my White House was broken and I'm switching parties. Hopefully she can write better than she talks, because DEI Tapper sounds a lot like Mamala.
I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is, if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to, and
community?
communities
Oh, you mean
that
A, B,
I
C, D,
respect,
LGBTQ+?
I will be there with you. This book, Independent, it's about looking outside of boxes, not just always being in a partisan stance.
Oh, for real?
While Binder's gold digging for book deals, Democrats are rolling their eyes. One Democrat says Binder's book is the most grifty thing I've seen in a long time. And that's saying something in Washington. One former Biden White House official says she was the public face telling us all that this White House was on track and that Biden was amazing. And now she doesn't even want to be a Democrat. Here's what CNN said about DEI Tapper.
What bothers me about this, and I was making some phone calls before this to a number of former Biden administration officials and people in the White House, where they were saying this is just all an attempt to sell books. And that is what the general consensus is right now in the Democratic Party.
Whoa, wait a second. When Tapper's book came out, CNN was like, this book was brave. But Binder writes a carbon copy and it's like, uh-oh, money grab. One Democrat insider tells Fox, the job market's really tough right now for Biden world, and I cannot begrudge anyone who needs to make a quick buck. Binder's been trying to get a TV deal, but let's be honest, that was never in the cards. After she left the administration, she tried to get a job co-hosting The View, but The View never called her back. Some people have better luck. Just ask Lloyd Austin. He's making some moves from the Pentagon to K Street. Lloyd's now a lobbyist. Others are getting slapped with subpoenas. Comer's having his own summer soiree, sending letters to top Biden aides who had a heavy hand in the cover-up. The Sly Five just got a formal invite to be deposed. And Joe's doctor, he's not off the hook either. The one who gave him more COVID tests than prostate exams. O'Connor and Comer, they're checking their calendars right now for a good date. Voters just want respect and the truth. Two things Democrats abandoned because the machine told them to. But instead of earning it back, they're trying to buy it back. They just dropped $20 million on a study about men. The project's called Speaking with American Men, SAM. And guess what? Sam's led by a lady who works in the abortion industry and used to work for Media Matters and MoveOn.org. She specializes, are you ready, in gender and extremism projects. And here's what you found. Quote, Democrats are seen as weak, whereas Republicans are seen as strong. Young men also spoke of being invisible to the Democratic coalition. $20 million for that. Hulk Hogan told you that for free. And how are you supposed to get strong when your loudest leader's tampon? Next, they asked, do Democrats know what a man is? Quote, the focus groups found that young men feel they are in crisis, stressed, ashamed, and confused over what it means to be a man in 25. They vented about conflicting cultural messages of masculinity that put them in a no-win situation around the meaning of a man. So this was the men of the focus group, men who were confused about what it means to be a man, and men who are ashamed of being a man. And they found a Hispanic guy in Vegas who, shocker, doesn't love Lady Gaga. Quote, a Latino man from Las Vegas said that during the 24 campaign, Harris focused on, oh, I got Beyonce on stage with me. Oh, I got Lady Gaga on stage. And it just kind of felt like, what does that have to do with me? I'm trying to move up in life. Trump's over here like, if we're able to get a surplus in our budget, then we're going to have no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. Men aren't $1 million science experiment. They're studying us like we're space aliens. And just because you grow a beard and make a podcast doesn't make Democrat men manlier. It kind of makes you look like you're going undercover. And speaking of undercover, was Binder undercover this whole time? Former White House officials say Binder would joke about being an independent while she was in the administration. That tracks because she left the White House on Jan 20th and wrote a 300-page book in 4 months. Now, I've written 2 books. It's impossible unless you've been writing it for a long time. No wonder she was so bad at briefing. She was unprepared because she was busy writing this backstabbing book. The 2 big DEI picks Biden made, Kamala and Binder, blew up in his face. DEI hand grenades. Kaboom. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube.
All right, so y'all want to keep going? There's been a travel ban, huge one actually, huge, because of what happened in Colorado. So the OG has signed a travel ban on about 12 countries. And it's heavy, yo. It is heavy. Check this out.
A bunch of major headlines coming out of the White House tonight after President Trump signed a series of proclamations behind closed doors. That includes a sweeping travel ban on 12 countries with a partial restriction on 7 others that we just mentioned, reintroducing a controversial step that he took early in his first term with some differences this time tonight. What we are reading in this proclamation is this takes effect at midnight 5 days from now on June 9th, and it bans travel to the United States from Afghanistan, Myanmar, Chad, the Republic of the Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Eritrea, Haiti, Iran, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Yemen. This also comes as the president signed a proclamation suspending international visas for new students at Harvard as he is trying to block foreign students from enrolling at the university. My sources are here in the newsroom on this breaking news. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez, the New York Times' David Sanger, along with former federal prosecutor Shan Wu. Priscilla, let's start with you just in terms of the differences in the travel ban we saw in term 1 and what we're seeing now.
Well, there are quite a bit of similarities as well as some glaring differences, particularly with the inclusion of Afghanistan. But this is something that President Trump has been telegraphing since day one. It's also something that I'm told has been an ongoing discussion and deliberation within this administration. And they felt quite empowered because, as a reminder, in the first term, the Supreme Court eventually did essentially okay a version of the travel ban, saying that the administration had broad discretion. The president specifically had broad discretion when it comes to limiting the entry of certain non-citizens. Now, as far as the similarities, in that iteration that was eventually approved or okayed by the Supreme Court, Somalia, Yemen, Libya, Chad, Iran, those were in that iteration.
Yeah.
Afghanistan, it wasn't. Cuba and Venezuela, similarly, weren't. That is going to matter moving forward, particularly in Republican politics and in Florida. But the basis of this has been for this administration, both the first term and now, the screening and the vetting, and that these countries do not provide sufficient screening and vetting. Therefore, they are limiting the entry. But this is certainly a blow to those non-citizens from those countries.
Yeah, and David, as I was reading through this earlier, essentially what the president is saying here is that he can take some of these countries off if he changes their mind or changes, the bar that they've set for the vetting, and he can also add other countries. And basically is arguing this came after a review by the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio.
This was done, I think, in a much more skillful way than they did with the original, the so-called Muslim ban at the time, because what he's arguing here is state failure makes it impossible for the United States to judge the backgrounds of people who have applied for visas. And what he doesn't do, of course, is lay out the standard that they must meet in order to get past that list. And, it's sort of we'll know it when we see it. And you've seen him do this a number of times in different ways, in different orders in recent times, where he's designing it to give himself the maximum discretion and making the argument to the courts that this is within the president's authority. This is sort of an executive branch decision.
Yeah. Shan, legally, how are you looking at this tonight?
I think if we go back to the original Trump 1 ban, as Priscilla was talking about, the Supreme Court gave the president the raw power to do this. The factual predicate here, I think, is really poor. I mean, he talks about the Boulder, Colorado suspect whose country is actually not on the banned list. He also has some kind of silly things, I think, which says, for example, some of the countries that face the bans or partial restrictions are people who have a higher percentage of people overstaying visas. I mean, how is a country supposed to screen for that? What's that got to do with anything? Individual people choose to overstay it. But
are you saying that's more of a responsibility of the United States?
Absolutely. In fact, I would argue most of this is the responsibility of the United States to take care of problems overstaying within the U.S. And if they have information that particular people may have ties to terrorist groups, I mean, that's, again, something they need to look at. I think it's overbroad, but again, I think the president has been given the raw legal power to do this, but there'll certainly be legal challenges. I think at the end of the day, when it reaches the Supreme Court, probably on the emergency docket basis, I think they're still going to uphold it.
Yeah, and I think the rollout, we're also seeing the differences in, as I call it, round 1 and round 2, because round 1, it came out very quickly. People were left at airports, freaking out over, what this meant for them then. This seems to obviously be rolled out in a much different way, much later on in his term. What have the deliberations been like? I mean, since a lot of the people who are working in the Department of Homeland Security and in the West Wing, Stephen Miller and company, were here for that first time.
Well, carefully crafted. I had talked to a source about this when the deliberations were ongoing, and they said they learned their lesson. Remember, when the president came into office this January, one of the first questions I asked, is the travel ban going to come out as swiftly as it did in the first term? And that was the response that I got, because they did want to craft this carefully. This has already gone to the Supreme Court. They knew what discretion and authority they had. I think something to watch out for here, Caitlin, is how this evolves, because it leaves, to your point, an opportunity for countries to be added or not. And one of the big priorities for this administration, particularly on immigration, is which of these countries is not taking their citizens back when they're trying to deport them? Which one of these do they want to work with to send other migrants there? Remember, they try to do that with South Sudan. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into this equation moving forward.
In terms of even making a deal, basically,
right,
and how we've seen play out with the tariffs. David, also on Harvard tonight, this is a big move that the president is taking, trying to essentially fulfill his effort to block Harvard from being able to enroll international students. You're an alum of the school, but I just wonder, from your reporting, what you take away from this proclamation tonight.
So he telegraphed that this was coming, and a good number of Harvard students, as a good number of students at a lot of major universities, are foreign born. I also teach there. I teach national security, and I can tell you that in the class that we teach, we have a lot of foreigners, and it vastly enriches the classroom experience. You wouldn't want to talk about national security issues only among Americans and not get different perspectives and pushback on these issues. I don't think the president is really focused on that. I think he is at this point very determined to go punish Harvard for standing up to him. And this is going to be the defining struggle, I think, with the academic world.
Well, and Shan, people might look at this and say, well, whoa, didn't a court just block him from blocking the school from enrolling international students? But he seems to be citing a different authority in this proclamation tonight, instead talking about national security.
Yeah, I think that's mostly just him talking about national security, trying a different tactic. I think the Harvard ban is likely to fail because there's just no basis for singling out Harvard in particular. If there is evidence that particular students have ties or they've done something criminally wrong, that's something they can zero in on, but not really. I mean, there's allusions to that kind of evidence supposedly, but really haven't seen that yet. And that's where the courts are going to look to see, is there any factual basis for this, or is he just sort of continuing his vendetta against Harvard?
Yeah, and we'll see how the courts respond to this. Thank you all for that reporting and that insight.
Thank you for tuning in to the live show. You know what time it is. It is your boy, Genesis. All right. Ladies and gentlemen, God bless you for being here. Instead of looking for perfection, seek for consistency. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on God. Believe in yourself. Believe in your dreams. And believe in Almighty God. All right. With that being said, God is the greatest. All right. Fathers, take care of your kids. I know life is hard, but try as much as you can to be present with them. That way, they have you in their heart, and they know that you mean a lot to them, and they mean a lot to you. Shout out to the veterans, the military personnel. God bless you. Thank you for all that you've done and continue to do. Thank you for protecting the homeland. Shout out to law enforcement. God bless you. And shout out to our esteemed members. All right. We do have membership on this channel. It is $4.99. Shout out to the GOAT, Luke. God bless you. Shout out to Ellie, the legendary moderator, C. Shelley. God bless you. Thank you for always tuning in. God bless you. It's not underappreciated. God bless you. Truly appreciate you. All right. Shout out to Busky, the bucket master, for the tiers. If some of you liberals need the bucket, Sar Busky, okay? Sar Busky has the buckets for you guys. Zyro's Garden, God bless you. Another moderator, God bless you. And some viewers tonight, I'll just mention a little bit. Let me see. I think I saw Terry here a while ago. Shout out to Terry. I saw Terry here from Louisiana. God bless you, Terry. God bless you, Jet. Jet is another guy who is becoming consistent. God bless you, Jet. Yeah. All right. With that being said, God bless you guys. God is the greatest. We do this because we love the United States. You guys don't just come up here because, I don't know, because you just want to spend your time watching the news. No, you come here because you love the United States. That's why you come here. And that's why we do this, okay? Because we actually love the United States and we want to know what's going on in the United States. We support the United States. We believe the United States is the greatest country on the face of the earth. That is what I believe. The United States is the greatest country on the face of the earth. And God is with the United States. Regardless of what's going on, whether you're liberal or a conservative, it doesn't matter. What matters is you are American and you love this nation. That's what matters. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican or a Democrat. What matters is you love America. That means you support the United States of America, meaning you support unity. That's what matters. You support unity. That's what matters, okay? With that being said, it is your boy Genesis. God is the greatest. God bless you. God bless your family. God bless your kids. God bless your business. And I am your boy Genesis one more time. I gotta go. I love you guys. God is the greatest. God bless America. Here we go.